I just poured a bucket of water into a mud pit and unexpectedly obtained an infinite water source that would never run dry. I casually scattered a few seeds on the barren land and immediately harvested a mountain of grain. This action was seen by a passing boy. He thought I was a divine emissary descended to the mortal realm and knelt down to beg me to save his gravely ill mother. Seeing his filial piety, I asked him to prepare a cow. After all, in the rules of Minecraft, milk can clear all negative status effects and diseases. Thank you so much, Lord Saint. I will definitely find a cow for you. The boy shouted excitedly. Do you need anything else? Do you have any string at home? I want to make a fishing rod. Just call me Silas. No problem. But Lord Silas, the rivers around here have all dried up. Where are you going to fish? I glanced at the small puddle in front of me and revealed a confident smile. Don't worry. Even if there are no fish inside, I can still fish them out. After bidding me farewell, the boy Arthur sprinted all the way back to Oakhaven, only to receive a severe beating from his biological father, John. You brat, not helping with the chores and running around blindly. Don't you know your mother is gravely ill? Arthur felt extremely wronged from the beating and hastily shouted, Stop hitting me. Father, I found a way to save mother. The surrounding air instantly froze. Who told you that? It was the older brother living in the Black Forest who said it. He said as long as we have a cow, there is a way to cure mother's illness. Unexpectedly, upon hearing this news, John was not excited, but instead squatted down with a look of desolation. It's because your father is incompetent and can't cure your mother's illness, and now, I can't even protect you. In this era of the Great Famine, how could there be a normal person living out in the barren wilderness? He firmly believed I was an evil warlock. Asking Arthur for these things was definitely the price for casting dark magic, and the ultimate goal must be to eat his son. John threw down his wooden stick, hugged Arthur, and cried bitterly, It's your father who is useless. You stay at home, I will go deliver myself to death. Early the next morning, I woke up from my bed of leaves. I gripped the empty air with both hands. Axe, come. A stone axe appeared out of thin air. I swung the axe, heave-ho, frantically chopping down the towering trees that had grown around me. Just after I finished gathering wood, Arthur ran out of the forest panting, handing me a ball of string. I was just about to thank him when I noticed his father, John, following behind with an ashen face, tightly holding 2 egg-laying hens in his hands. As soon as John came up, he directly plopped down on his knees, raising the chickens high above his head with both hands. Lord Silas, this lowly one is willing to trade my life for my son's life. These chickens will serve as my sacrifice and apology to you. I was dumbfounded on the spot. What the heck? Trading a life for a life? A sacrifice? Did I become a manating evil villain? Turning my head and quietly asking Arthur, I finally understood. This old man John had always thought I was a manating warlock living in the forest. I facepalmed speechlessly. I, the dignified MC Steve, a godlike creator, was actually regarded as a wild monster of the forest. I quickly told John to get up, stating that I absolutely did not eat people. Staring at the 2 hens, a bold idea popped into my mind. Since the chickens have been brought here, I might as well do an experiment. Uncle John, let the chickens go. John let go with a face full of wariness. The 2 hens flapped their wings and scurried around on the ground. I walked to the edge of the field and casually knocked off 2 newly sprouted wheat plants. The wheat instantly turned into seeds and flew into my inventory. The moment I took out the wheat seeds, the 2 scurrying hens seemed to have a pause button pressed on them. They stared blankly at the seeds in my hand and sprinted over with quick little steps. Here, eat. I casually fed the seeds to them. The next scene directly shattered the worldview of John and his son. As soon as the 2 hens pecked the seeds into their mouths, their bodies uncontrollably pressed together. After only 3 seconds, with a soft pop sound, a fluffy little white chick, without any process of laying an egg or incubating, appeared out of thin air directly at the feet of the 2 hens, bouncing around the moment it landed. Complete dead silence. John's eyes almost popped out of his head, and even his breathing stopped. At this moment, a storm was literally brewing in his mind. This violated common sense. Doesn't reproduction require 1 male and 1 female? How could 2 hens put together produce a cub? And without laying an egg, without incubation, a chick that takes at least 2 or 3 weeks to grow up just appeared out of thin air. This was definitely not an illusion. Throughout history, the only one who could do such a thing was the legendary creator of the world. It was over. Just now, he actually asked a living incarnation of a god to pay for his son's life. If the god blamed him for this, even the Reaper wouldn't dare to take him. John's legs went soft, his knees smashed heavily onto the ground, and he frantically drew the cross, knocking his forehead until it bled. This lowly one has eyes but failed to see. I didn't know a divine emissary had descended. I mistook you for a dark mage. Please spare my life, my lord. Seeing his father kneel, Arthur's knees bent as he was about to follow suit. I grabbed him. You are my newly accepted follower. Stand up straight. John knelt on the ground, praying frantically. Looking at his trembling back, I explained the next task. Tomorrow morning, bring the cow and your wife here. Remember, just borrowing the cow is fine, I won't hurt it. After instructing John, I waved my hand to let him hurry back. John left with endless gratitude. I looked at his back and let out a long breath. I finally managed to fool this old man into going back. Next is my Steve's exclusive development time. I took out the ball of string Arthur brought, threw it into the crafting table to break it down into string, added wooden sticks, and directly crafted the early game artifact of fishing rod. A fisherman never returns empty-handed. I swung my shovel, dug a 2x2 pit in the ground, poured in 2 buckets of underground water, and then expanded it outward, making a standard 4x4 fish pond. Cast the line, hit the water. The bobber suspended quietly on the surface. Reality isn't a game after all. I waited a full 10 minutes, and the water surface showed no movement. I wasn't in a hurry and simply sat down on the grass. The breeze blew, the leaves rustled. I have to say, this wilderness life without having to pay taxes and work for a lord is actually quite nourishing. Just then, the bobber sank sharply. Got a bite. I abruptly raised my hand, and a half-meter-long cod broke the surface, turned into a golden light in midair, and crashed straight into my inventory. Isn't this better than mining? Seafood freedom achieved. If I can fish up an enchanted book, like Mending or Luck of the Sea, then it'll take off right here. Cast the line. Alright, another cod. Again, damn, a pufferfish? Continue, a stick? What do I need this piece of junk for? I grinded by the water pit all night, while down the mountain in Oakhaven, things were turning upside down. John ran overnight to Elder Eldon's house and opened his mouth to borrow the only old yellow cow in the village. Elder Eldon puffed on his pipe, his brows furrowed deeply. Having lived for the better part of his life, what storms hadn't he seen? Upon hearing John say that a divine emissary Silas had appeared on the mountain who could ripen wheat and conjure chicks out of thin air, only 2 words popped into his mind. Con artist. It had been a severe drought for over 3 months. If a god truly descended, would they just watch the crops in the fields wither and die? It was definitely some wandering charlatan from out of town playing tricks, but looking at John's bloodshot eyes, Eldon knew he couldn't dissuade him. His eyes rolled, and he agreed to lend the cow, but on the condition that he himself must go along tomorrow morning. After sending John away, Eldon immediately called his 2 burly sons to his side, his eyes turning fierce. Tomorrow morning, I'm going with them. You'll leave marks along the way, and you secretly follow behind. As soon as I give the hand signal, you rush up and beat that fraud to a pulp for me. The 2 sons cracked their knuckles, their faces full of ferocity, and agreed. At dawn the next day, the illness of John's wife, Mary, suddenly worsened. She was burning hot all over, speaking delirious words from the fever, looking like she wasn't going to make it. John went crazy with anxiety. He kicked Arthur awake to urge the village elder, while he himself carried Mary on his back and sprinted wildly toward the mountain. Eldon was dragged out of bed by Arthur. Hearing that someone was dying and they still wanted to run up the mountain, he slapped his thigh in anger. What a sin! At a time like this, you don't look for an herbalist, but insist on finding that charlatan. He led out the old yellow cow, holding in a belly full of fire as he followed behind, swearing that he would expose that fraud's true colors Facetophis later. The group hurried on their journey, running for nearly an hour, and finally saw my camp in the woods. When Elder Eldon saw my camp clearly through the bushes, he was completely stunned. Torches were planted all around, bright as day, a bizarre square stone house, and rows of wheat growing weirdly. The most outrageous thing was a youth with fair skin, looking like some young noble, sitting by a shallow water pit fishing. That water pit was so clear you could see the bottom, let alone fish. There wasn't even a single strand of waterweed. Eldon sneered, feeling assured in his heart. It really was a fraud. It would be a ghost's work if he could fish anything out of this broken water pit. Just as this thought popped up, I, sitting by the water pit, abruptly raised my hand. Splash! A massive fish, fully half a meter long, leaped out of thin air from that crystal clear water pit. Then, the large fish exploded into a brilliant golden light in midair and went whoosh, drilling into my body and disappearing. Eldon's eyes almost bulged out of their sockets. His legs went soft, his heart pounded wildly, and only one explosive thought remained in his mind. A miracle! It's a true miracle. I looked at the extra cod in my inventory and sighed in frustration. Having fished all night, my inventory was stuffed with a pile of raw cod, pufferfish, salmon, plus junk like wooden bowls, water bottles, and spider string. Not a single bone dropped, let alone an enchanted book. As I was complaining, Arthur's anxious voice came from behind. "Boss, my mother is dying. Please save her quickly." I looked back. John arrived panting heavily, carrying a skinny, emaciated woman on his back. Behind them followed Elder Eldon, leading the cow. I nodded, took out an iron bucket, and walked up to that old yellow cow. Looking closely, I was a bit dumbfounded. This cow is a male. Whatever. In the rules of MC, a cow is a cow. There's no distinction between male and female. I held the empty iron bucket, aimed it at the bull's belly, and silently chanted use. In the next second, milky white milk gushed out from under the bull's belly like a fountain, instantly filling the entire iron bucket. The old yellow cow didn't even move an inch, completely unharmed. Satisfied, I turned around holding the iron bucket, but didn't notice that the jaws of the several people behind me had almost smashed into the ground. Squeezing milk out of a bull was one thing, but the key was that iron bucket. It contained exactly 1 cubic meter of milk. 1 cubic meter of liquid weighs 1 ton. I carried the 1-ton iron bucket with one hand as easily as carrying a wooden ale mug. Arthur gulped frantically next to me, looking at me like he was looking at a monster. "Put your wife down. She'll be fine after drinking this bucket of milk." I pointed to the leaf bed nearby. John hurriedly laid Mary flat. Holding that ton of milk, I faced a dilemma. How do I feed this? In the game, you just drink it yourself. Feeding it to someone else is a first. I took out a wooden bowl, scooped a bowl of milk, and had John pour it into her. Mary drank it, but there was no reaction. It seems the wooden bowl won't work. She has to chug the bottle? No, chug the bucket directly. Aunt Mary, if you feel any discomfort next, just twitch your pinky finger. Mary nodded weakly. I lifted the iron bucket filled with a ton of milk and brought it directly to her lips. A scene defying physics occurred. The milk in the iron bucket didn't need me to tilt the angle at all. It directly climbed up the bucket wall and poured endlessly into Mary's throat. A full cubic meter of milk all went into her shriveled belly in a matter of moments. Surprisingly, her belly didn't bulge at all. As the milk emptied, the painful expression on Mary's face miraculously dissipated, and her paler cheeks quickly regained a rosy color. She opened her eyes, smiled at me gratefully, then tilted her head and fell into a deep, exhausted sleep. That's right, milk clears all negative status effects. Even terminal illnesses can be swept away in one wave. Taking advantage of this time, I carefully observed the other two people who came along. Elder Eldon was trembling with excitement on the side, and there was also a little girl, skinny as a bean sprout, hiding behind John. That was Arthur's younger sister, Lily. Looking at this shriveled little girl, I casually took out more than a dozen big red apples from my inventory and stuffed them into her arms. The little girl was startled, her face blushing bright red. Since the milk worked so well, I simply went back to the bowl and borrowed a few more buckets of milk, pouring a bucket for everyone present. Instantly, all the hidden injuries and old chronic diseases on everyone were cleared. Eldon rubbed his old, cold legs that had bothered him for decades, shedding tears of excitement. He crossed his arms over his chest and bowed deeply to me. Lord Saint, this lowly one is bold enough to beg you, Lord Emissary, to grant our village a way to survive. Eldon was about to drop to his knees with a thud. I grabbed him and pulled him up. This old man kept staring at my square of infinite water pool. I had already guessed what he was going to say. In these times, a lack of water is fatal. You're begging for water, right? Follow me. I led the group towards Oakhaven. After fishing all night, I leveled up 4 times in a row, and now I'm level 8. My activity range has directly expanded to 2187 meters. We walked for over a kilometer in the woods, and finally, I touched the invisible air wall ahead. Let's stop here. I took out a water bucket from my inventory, pressed it against the air wall, and poured the water onto the ground. A magical scene occurred. The water flow appeared out of thin air, flowing down both sides along the slope, continuous and never drying up. Eldon looked at that never-ending water source, his eyes brightening. So excited he became incoherent. But he kept glancing in the direction of the village from time to time, clearly puzzled as to why I didn't just put the water directly in the village. I also want to go to the village, but the conditions do not allow it. I sighed. Does my lord have some difficulties? Eldon asked cautiously. I thought to myself, this will have to be explained sooner or later. I might as well act big right now. As long as I step out of this range, disaster will strike. Watch closely. I took a deep breath and deliberately took one step outside the air wall. The moment I left the territory, the crushing rejection of the real world against the MC space crashed down. The earth began to tremble violently. A strong earthquake made Eldon stumble and fall to the ground. He felt in horror that the land under his feet was being torn apart. Even more terrifying was the sky. Countless pitch-black cracks suddenly fractured across the azure sky, spreading madly across the firmament like a giant spider web. The entire world seemed to be on the verge of shattering completely in the next second. The sky is falling. Heavenly punishment has descended. Eldon was scared out of his wits. His crotch grew warm, and he crawled backward using his hands and feet. Arthur hugged my thigh tightly, crying out heart-wrenchingly, "Boss, come back quickly. People are going to die." I quickly pulled my foot back and retreated inside the air wall. The vibration stopped instantly, and the black cracks in the sky healed rapidly, as if nothing had ever happened. I looked at the crowd collapsed on the ground and shrugged. There, if I leave, that's pretty much what happens. My power is too strong, the mortal world cannot bear it. That morning, Elder Eldon practically rolled and crawled his way back to the village. As soon as he entered his house, it was like his soul had left his body. He ignored whatever his wife asked, not snapping back to reality until his wife tried to put a cross, blessed by the church, on his hand. The world hadn't ended, gods truly exist, and in order not to shatter the mortal world, that saint preferred to trap himself in the Black Forest. At the thought of this, Eldon got goosebumps all over, and his awe for me was maxed out. Just then, his 2 burly sons ran in excitedly carrying their self-defense iron-tipped wooden clubs. "Father, we're ready. When do we go beat up that fraud?" Eldon spat out his porridge 2 meters away, cold sweat soaking his back in fright. He jumped up and fiercely slapped the back of his older son's head, making him spin half a circle on the spot. "Beat him. They'll let you beat him. That is a living divine emissary. Whoever dares to touch a hair on his head, I will break your damn legs." The 2 sons were dumbfounded by the beating, holding their heads and looking aggrieved. "Didn't you tell us to prepare last night?" "Shut up. Go and call all the men, women, and children in the village to the town square. I have a massive announcement." Elder Eldon turned his head towards the Black Forest, making the sign of the cross repeatedly to pray, "Lord Emissary, forgive us. The ignorant are fearless. The ignorant are fearless." Meanwhile, back at the forest camp, I was staring blankly at the newly popped up crafting recipe. Looking through the crafting table just now, I actually discovered a new recipe. Campfire. 3 logs, 3 sticks, 1 piece of coal. I immediately crafted this thing and placed it on the ground. A flame shot up and thick smoke pierced the sky. I reached out to touch it, and there was actually a real burning sensation. The flame climbed up my palm, burning so much it hurt. I quickly jumped into the pool to put out the fire. Not only can this thing ignite the surrounding weeds, the most overpowered part is that I threw raw fish on the 4 corners of the campfire. In just a few minutes, with a ding, for cooked fish popped right out. This efficiency completely outperforms a furnace. Even more outrageous operations followed. I brought a bucket of water and poured it directly next to the campfire. As the water spread over, it actually automatically bypassed the campfire. I simply used dirt blocks to pour water directly above the campfire, and the result was this fire actually burning vigorously underwater. Even the thick smoke could penetrate the water layer and rise. Unless you pour water directly into the center of the fire, this thing cannot be extinguished. It is an absolute god-tier light source and meat roaster that completely ignores physics. Awesome, keep fishing. With the campfire for cooking fish, I was now full of motivation. I had to seize the time to grind experience and level up so I could expand my territory into the village sooner. At this time in Oakhaven Square, the scorching sun hung high in the sky. All the farmers in the village were sweating profusely from the heat, holding shovels and complaining. Elder Eldon, puffing on his pipe, saw that everyone had arrived, then stood up and waved his big hand. "Stop arguing. Follow me. There is water to save our lives." The crowd instantly exploded into an uproar and majestically followed the elder sprinting toward the water source I had left behind. In the crowd, a village hoodlum named Dixon was swearing frantically. He patted his chest, guaranteeing that he had just been to this part of the forest yesterday, and there was absolutely not a single drop of water. If he lied, let him be struck by lightning and cursed to never find a wife in this lifetime. Just as he finished speaking, the group reached the edge of the forest. The men leading the vanguard erupted into heaven-shaking cheers. Dixon was dumbfounded. He squeezed out of the crowd to take a look, and his eyes almost popped out. In midair, 1 meter off the ground, a transparent block of water was suspended out of nowhere, without any support, without any pipes. Crystal clear water was gushing out from the suspended block, flowing down the dirt slope on both sides, never drying up. This was absolutely not water seeping from the ground. This was water from the void created out of thin air. Elder Eldon stood to the side, stroking his beard, full of pride. He had a few men swing their shovels to dig away the dirt under the water. The dirt layer was hollowed out, but that block of water source remained steadily floating in midair, not leaking a single drop. If the royal scholars from the capital city saw this scene, they would probably go insane on the spot. All the villagers lunged forward like madmen. Some scooped up water with their hands to drink frantically, others simply plunged their entire heads into the puddle. The sweet spring water flowed down their throats into their shriveled stomachs. Dixon stood to the side and slapped himself hard in the face. "It really hurts. I'm not dreaming. It's over. My toxic oath came true. I really won't get a wife in this lifetime. Whether he gets a wife or not doesn't matter. Having water means surviving." Eldon took the opportunity to warn everyone. "Remember, this is water bestowed by Lord Saint. The Lord is deep in the forest. Whoever dares to go disturb him, I will break his legs." At this time, I was sitting by the campfire burning underwater, bored out of my mind, pulling up my fishing rod. Another pair of broken leather boots. Bad luck. I fished all night and didn't even see a single hair of an enchanted book. Just as I was complaining, Arthur ran over, sweating profusely. I casually tossed the pair of leather boots I just fished up to him. "Put them on, see if they fit." Arthur froze for a moment, looking at the pair of boots that was clearly a full size bigger than his feet. He took off his straw sandals and stepped into them. A magical scene occurred. The moment the leather boots touched the top of his foot, they visibly began to shrink, perfectly molding to his size. Arthur jumped around in shock, taking them off and putting them on and taking them off, having a blast. "All right, stop playing." I pulled out a stone axe and a stone shovel and tossed them over. "Pull out your dagger and slash your own arm with it." Without a second thought, Arthur pulled out his dagger and made a slashing motion against his left arm. No bleeding. The blade slid across his skin, surprisingly leaving only a shallow white mark. It didn't even break the skin. Armor mechanics are active. My heart leaped with wild joy. As long as I assemble a full set of leather gear, that's solid armor points. Ordinary swords and blades won't be able to hurt people. If I equip a guard of knights with this, they could absolutely walk sideways in these chaotic times. "Go, chop a tree with the stone axe." I continued issuing commands. The experiment must continue to the end. I wanted to figure out if people in the real world could trigger MC's physics rules. Arthur swung the stone axe and started frantically chopping at a large tree nearby. Wood chips flew. The notch got bigger and bigger. With a loud boom, the towering tree lost its support and, following real-world physics, crashed straight down to the ground, kicking up a cloud of dust. It didn't drop a wood block. The tree didn't float. I sighed. Sure enough, if they use MC tools, they only act as ordinary, sturdy iron tools and absolutely cannot trigger the block drop mechanic. I also made him try digging stone with a stone pickaxe, tilling dirt with a stone hoe, and even drawing water with an iron bucket. Complete failure across the board. My plan to issue tools to villagers to help me with infrastructure construction was completely ruined. Try one last thing. I took out a composter crafted from 7 wooden slabs. "Go pull some grass and throw it in." Arthur did as told. The moment the weeds were tossed into the wooden barrel, they directly turned into green particles and disappeared, and the bottom of the barrel was raised by a layer of grayish-brown fertilizer. Success. Although they couldn't use tools, the interaction hitbox for the composter was open. "Try lifting this barrel." Arthur strained until his face turned red, using all his strength, but the composter didn't budge an inch. It's just as well it can't be moved. They'll leave it here as a fixed recycling station. I clapped the dust off my hands. All right, Arthur, take the 2 hens back to nourish your mother. Come again tomorrow. After sending Arthur off, I took a stroll along the forest, checking on the situation at the water source along the way. Before I even got close, my head buzzed. A huge crowd of people was kneeling in the clearing. Men, women, and children, exactly 54 souls, starved to look like mummies, skin and bones, with deeply sunken eye sockets. When the breeze blew, it felt like it could knock a large swath of them down. Facing the direction of my territory, they burned a few bundles of dried grass acting as ritual incense. Placed on the ground were shriveled wild vegetable roots. An old woman led the way, and the entire village lay prostrate on the ground praying frantically, muttering words under their breath. Holy crap, sacrificing to me? I'm not dead yet. Eldon looked up and met my gaze directly. This old man's soul flew out of his body in terror, thinking I was blaming him for bringing people to disturb the gods. He scrambled over, throwing himself into the mud in complete prostration. Commoner Eldon welcomes the Lord Saint. With his shout, the dozens of people behind him were so terrified they pressed their faces tightly against the mud, not even daring to breathe loudly. I hurried over to pull him up. Elder, get up quickly. I already told you I am not a god. The more I explained, the more violently they trembled. Looking at this group of commoners who were so starved they could draw their last breath at any moment, I felt a heavy block in my chest. Since reasoning doesn't work, then it's time for hardcore measures. I took out wooden planks and clicked frantically on the ground. Smack, 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 smack. In the blink of an eye, a flat wooden table, for meters wide and half a meter high, appeared out of thin air in front of everyone. Dead silence. Even the sound of breathing stopped. Ignoring their terrified gazes, I opened my inventory and pulled out all the loot I had fished up the entire night. 14 fat and massive cod. Each one was a full half-meter long, gleaming with a cold silver light, piled into a small mountain, crashing heavily onto the wooden table. The visual impact was absolutely earth-shattering. It's fish, such big fish. The villagers went crazy. From their throats came the sound of beast-like, greedy swallowing. In these times, even the mud at the bottom of the rivers was cracked dry. Where could anyone get live fish this big? One of these fish, eaten sparingly, was enough for a family to live on for half a month. I cleared my throat, my voice naturally carrying an imposing aura. Elder, these 14 fish, one for each of the 14 households in your village. A violent gasp sounded from below, and someone actually fainted from sheer excitement. But I must set a rule. From now on, at this time every day, I will place 14 fish here. What you need to do is go up the mountain, pull weeds, strip leaves, and fill up those 7 composters for me. Trading weeds for big fat fish? What kind of condition was this? This was simply a blessing bestowed by the Lord. Thank you, Lord Silas. Thank you for the gift of life, my lord. The villagers prostrate themselves again, their foreheads banging against the ground, faces smeared with snot and tears. I truly couldn't stand this scene, so I waved my hand and turned to vanish deep into the forest. For the next 3 days, I completely transformed into a ruthless fishing machine. Fishing during the day, going to collect bone meal from the composters in the evening, and using the bone meal to frantically ripen wheat at night, harvesting seeds, and then continuing to fish. My experience bar soared, and the progress was over halfway. One more level, and my territory would directly cover all of Oakhaven. Over in Oakhaven, with their bellies full, the villagers worked as if they were pumped with chicken blood. Eldon even mobilized the old and young of the entire village to empty out the largest and sturdiest stone house in the village. Every household brought their best, most treasured furniture inside. Lord Silas will be coming down the mountain soon. Even if the Lord doesn't live here, we must set up the utmost grandeur. Eldon stood in the courtyard shouting commands at the top of his lungs. The villagers happily moved things around, each person's face glowing red with health. Just as Oakhaven was immersed in peace, a crisis was quietly approaching. Less than 2 miles away from Oakhaven was their sworn enemy Ashvale. The two villages had fought many times over the years for water and fertile land. Broken legs and bleeding heads were commonplace. Now, during the Great Famine, Ashvale had also long run out of water and food. The villagers kept themselves alive daily by digging up shriveled grass roots. Ashvale had a lazy scoundrel waiting to die named Gareth. On this day, he was driven out by the whole village to find food. Starving so badly his vision went dark, he unknowingly stumbled to the border of Oakhaven. The cold wind blew past. Gareth's dog-like nose twitched sharply. The smell of meat. It was the rich aroma of fresh fish soup. He swallowed the sour acid bubbling up in his throat and, following the scent, sneaked sneakily into Oakhaven. Bizarre. Too bizarre. The village was quiet. No one came out to dig for wild vegetables. Moreover, the aroma wasn't coming from just one house. Every single household was boiling fish soup. Gareth's eyes turned bloodshot, driven nearly mad with jealousy. Why is it that our village starves to the point of gnawing on tree bark, while you people in Oakhaven feast on big fish and meat every day? He lowered his body, sneaked up to an empty thatched cottage, and kicked open the broken wooden door. Hanging from the roof beams were impressively 2 large, dried, half-meter-long cod. Next to them was a large water vat, completely filled with crystal-clear, sweet well water. Gareth rushed over, grabbed a wooden ladle, and chugged 3 large bowls of water, burping in pure bliss. Next, he stepped on a stool, violently tore down the 2 large fish from the beams, and hugged them tightly to his chest. I struck it rich. It's all mine. He was just about to slip out the door when a child's sharp scream suddenly came from behind. Thief! Catch the thief! The people from Ashvale are stealing the Lord Emissary's fish. Once the shout rang out, the entirety of Oakhaven instantly exploded. Dozens of well-fed, energetic men grabbed their pitchforks and machetes, charging out with murderous intent flashing in their eyes. Hack him to death. How dare he steal the Lord's fish? Gareth was so terrified his soul almost left his body. His two legs spun into a blur as he dashed madly out of the village. The fish in his arms were too heavy and severely slowed down his speed. Hearing the furious roars getting closer and closer behind him, Gareth gritted his teeth, smashed the two fish violently onto the ground, and went empty-handed, rolling and crawling until he escaped the boundaries of Oakhaven. Gareth ran all the way back to Ashvale in one breath, his legs turning into jelly as he collapsed on the ground. He went for wool and came home shorn. He didn't get a single bite of meat and almost lost half his life. He couldn't swallow this foul breath. His eyes rolled, and a plan came to mind. I can't beat you guys alone, so I'll mobilize the whole village to go rob you. He climbed up from the ground, rushed into the courtyard of Ashvale's village head, heralded and roared at the top of his lungs. Village head, something terrible has happened. Those animals in Oakhaven cut off the underground water. Harold was currently pulling his hair out in worry. Hearing these words, he shot up. What kind of bullshit are you spouting? The underground water dried up long ago. I saw it with my own eyes. I swear it on the Holy Spirit. Gareth added fuel to the fire crazily. Not only did they cut off the water, they secretly used that water to raise giant fish. Every household has half-meter-long fish hanging from their roof beams. I just went to beg for a sip of water and was almost beaten to death by them. These words were like sparks falling into a powder keg. The villagers of Ashvale had already gathered outside the courtyard. Hearing these words, everyone's eyes instantly turned red. 3 years of the Great Famine, the tragic state of trading children for food was right before their eyes. So it turned out Oakhaven had cut off their path to survival. Cutting off people's water source is like murdering their parents. No wonder our village can't even drink a mouthful of muddy water. It's all been hoarded by them. Grab your weapons. Tomorrow at dawn, our whole village will charge over. Demand water. Demand fish. Make them pay in blood. Furious roars resounded through the sky above Ashvale. Dozens of starving, reedied men began sharpening their machetes and whittling sharpened spears. Gareth hid behind the crowd, a venomous sneer curling at the corner of his mouth. Fight. The more tragic the fight, the better. When the time comes, he'll definitely take advantage of the chaos to go to Oakhaven and snatch 10 big fish back. Meanwhile, several miles away in the woods, I held my fishing rod, watching the experience bar finally break past the critical threshold of level 9. Boom! The air wall abruptly expanded outward. My territory range instantly multiplied, directly rolling over the forest and swallowing the entirety of Oakhaven in one breath. I held my fishing rod, watching the experience bar break through. I stood up, ready to leave the woods. Finally, I can leave this broken forest. Village life here. Steve, come. Just as I packed my gear and prepared to go all out, Oakhaven down the mountain was facing a storm of blood and rain. During a severe drought, cutting off water means cutting off life. Ashvale was starving and desperate. All the men in the village grabbed their polished hoes and pitchforks, preparing to fight Oakhaven for water. The two groups stood in a deadly standoff at the border, where yellow sand filled the air, swords drawn and bows bent, looking like a bloody battle that would cost lives was about to erupt. But it turned out the people of Oakhaven had no intention of fighting at all. They directly carried over buckets filled with clear water, slammed them down onto the ground with a clang, and conveniently handed over several half-meter-long, fat fish. The people of Ashvale were dumbfounded on the spot, their weapons almost falling to the ground. Ashvale's village head Harold leaned on his cane, his lips trembling. Oakhaven's elder Eldon leaned in and lowered his voice to drop a bombshell. Old Harold, to tell you the truth, we have a divine emissary living on our mountain. This water and fish are all gifts from the Lord. Harold's eyes almost bulged out of their sockets, and he believed it on the spot. There was no need to doubt. In these times, other than a god, who could conjure endless flowing water? Just as the two villages shook hands and made peace, Oakhaven's backyard caught fire. That scoundrel named Gareth took advantage of the chaos to sneak into Oakhaven, specifically targeting the Saint's stone house the villagers reserved for me to steal things. Harold was so furious he trembled all over. He immediately ordered his men to drag Gareth out and, in front of everyone, directly exiled him from Ashvale. In this barren wilderness, being expelled from the village was equal to a death sentence. Gareth banged his head on the ground until his face was covered in blood, crying for his parents, but it was useless. He completely became a wandering ghost. With the external threat resolved, internal calamity arrived. A group of ferocious, wicked barons tax collectors barged into the village. The lead tax collector had a face full of fierce flesh. Holding a blood-stained iron sword, he had just knocked out a few old farmers in the neighboring village who couldn't pay their taxes, and now turned his sights on sucking blood from Oakhaven. The people of Oakhaven were well prepared. They grabbed the yellow dirt from the ground and smeared it on their faces, pretending to be emaciated and on the verge of drawing their last breaths. Elder Eldon scraped together a little broken silver and handed it over with bows and scrapes. The greedy tax collector saw through the trick at a glance. He shoved Eldon aside, drew his shiny iron sword, and insisted on forcing his way into the holy stone house the villagers fiercely protected. "Get out of my way. Whoever dares to block me will be killed on the spot." Eldon stood dead in front of the door, not yielding an inch. The tax collector went completely mad, raised his sword, and swung it down viciously toward Eldon's arm. With a sharp swish, Arthur drew his bow and fired, an arrow accurately deflecting the long sword. The tax collector went crazy with anger, glaring with bloodshot eyes, ready to unleash a massacre. Right at this hair-raising moment, a miracle descended. My rapidly rapidly expanding territory from leveling up rushed down the hillside, instantly swallowing the entire village entrance whole. The dry dirt filled with yellow sand transformed into ankle-deep, emerald green grass in the blink of an eye. A miracle has descended. The villagers fell to their knees in unison. The tax collector's hair stood on end from terror. He whipped his head around, and a massive behemoth, fully 3 meters tall, forged of pure iron, and covered in green vines, stood silently behind him. The Iron Golem Titan makes his entrance. This hulking giant swung its iron arm, as thick as a stone pillar, and like swatting a fly with a muffled thwack, the lead tax collector flew up into the air, traced a parabola in midair, and crashed wetly into the mud, fainting with all 4 limbs facing the sky on the spot. The remaining 2 attendants wet their pants in terror on the spot. Their knees went weak as they fell to the ground, banging their heads heavily and crying out, begging the Lord for mercy. The Iron Golem paid them no mind whatsoever. It took heavy steps, walked up to a terrified child, and out of its thick iron hand conjured a delicate, red poppy flower out of thin air, gently handing it over. The scene shifts. I was carrying a full inventory of baked fish, wood, and even an Infinity I enchanted book and a pair of Frostwalker 2 leather boots, humming a little tune as I walked down the mountain. As a result, my terrible sense of direction flared up, and I got lost. Fortunately, I ran into an Ashvale man getting water at the water source. He enthusiastically showed me the way. Looking at the madly growing towering trees and dense weeds along the way, the man trembled with excitement, leaning in close to me to boast wildly, "My lord, look at this. This is definitely the handiwork of the emissary. Look how vigorously this grass grows." I held back a laugh and kept nodding in agreement. Yes, the god is truly amazing. When we arrived at the entrance of Oakhaven, the atmosphere instantly reached its climax. The entire village lined up in neat formation and shouted in unison, "Welcome, Lord Silas." The man leading the way felt his brain buzz. He threw down his carrying pole, and the 2 buckets of water splashed all over the ground. He stiffened into a stone statue, only then realizing that he had actually been bragging to a living god the whole way. I ignored him and walked into the village with large strides. With one glance, I saw the Iron Golem at the village entrance, as well as the 2 tax collectors kneeling on the ground, their faces covered in blood from kowtowing. A pungent smell of urine filled the air. I pinched my nose, staring down at them condescendingly, and spoke coldly. "You may avoid the death penalty, but you cannot escape living punishment. You have committed many evils, your souls will fall into the abyss. In your next life, you are only fit to be wild boars rolling in the mud." Once these words were spoken, their lethal power rivaled a nuclear bomb. People in the Middle Ages feared curses on their souls after death the most. One tax collector's eyes rolled back, and he fainted from terror on the spot. The other cried, tears and snot flowing, tightly hugging the grass on the ground, begging me to give him a chance for forgiveness. I fought the urge to laugh and casually bluff. "Then it depends on how you accumulate good deeds and virtues in this life. Scram back and tell your greedy baron that Oakhaven cannot pay its taxes. Do you understand?" The attendant felt as if granted amnesty. He hoisted up the unconscious tax collector and scrambled out of the village, rolling and crawling. After dismissing these annoying flies, I turned and told Arthur that I wanted to choose a site to build a house myself. I found the elder's stone house the villagers saved for me too restrictive. I wanted to personally build a multi-story luxury villa. Having settled this matter, I walked up to the Iron Golem. This big lug lowered his head and actually handed over a bouquet of poppies from his hand. The floral scent filled the air. I reached out and took it, beginning to test his loyalty. "If I hit you, will you fight back?" I asked. The Iron Golem firmly shook his head. "If someone hits me, will you help me beat him up?" The Iron Golem nodded frantically. "Done. This is simply the strongest gold medal knight on the surface." I punched his rock-hard iron chest. "From now on, you follow me. I bestow upon you the name Titan. I eat meat, you drink the soup." Titan was so happy his pair of iron arms flailed up and down with a clatter, shaking the ground. While I was picking a prime spot to build my house, the village head's son, Piers, suddenly ran over howling like a ghost and a wolf. "Lord Silas, something's wrong." Something grew on my head. I looked closely and almost laughed out loud. He unexpectedly had a square, translucent straw hat resting on his head. The villager had changed professions to a farmer. I slapped my thigh hard. It must be that after my territory covered the village, the composter I placed at the water source triggered the village mechanics. I immediately took out a stone hoe and handed it to Piers. "Take this, aim at the ground and silently chant use in your heart." Piers gripped the hoe tightly with both hands, sweating profusely from nervousness. He closed his eyes and exerted force frantically. Instantly, the land in front of him turned into a neat piece of farmland. "How does it feel?" I asked. A tiny bit of my strength was drawn away. Piers said, panting heavily. I then stuffed a wheat seed into his hand. Copying what he saw, he skillfully planted the magic wheat into the ground. The green wheat seedlings broke through the soil instantly. Awesome, the food problem is completely solved. With these workers, do I still need to worry about not having enough to eat? I immediately asked Piers to gather everyone in the village. Men, women, and children all gathered in the open space. With a wave of my hand, I set up a row of 7 composters in a dirt pit. Line up, jump into the pit one by one, and I will give you a job change and issue straw hats. The villagers' faces flushed red with excitement. This was was the qualification to plant magic wheat. The old farmer Oswald was the first to jump in. A straw hat instantly popped up on his head, and he jumped on the spot in excitement. Then they tried one by one. Unexpectedly, that village hoodlum Dixon, who swore a toxic oath, jumped in and squatted for a full 10 minutes, but his head remained bare, stubbornly failing to change professions. There were others who failed as well. Elder Eldon leaned over and explained that those who succeeded were all experienced old hands at farming in the village. It seems changing professions also picks its people. I walked to the front of this straw hat army that successfully changed jobs, rubbing my hands frantically in my mind. The main event was here. I couldn't wait to open their trading panels. After just one glance, my blood pressure spiked on the spot. Profiteers, pure profiteers, 20 wheat for 1 emerald? Slaughtering a fat sheep isn't even this ruthless. Why don't you just rob me? I suppressed the urge to draw my sword and slash people, patiently scrolling down one by one. Suddenly, my eyes locked onto a trading box, and my breathing hitched. Melon seeds. In this era of the Great Famine where people were so poor they had almost dug up all the grassroots, melon seeds actually spawned. Even if the price is a ripoff, as long as I have 1 seed, give me some time, and I can grow an entire sea of melons. Not only can we achieve melon-eating freedom, but I can also lead the whole village to wealth. The blueprint completely unfolded in my mind. I immediately gathered all the villagers wearing straw hats and gave each of them a stone hoe. These farmers held the stone hoes as if they were holding family heirlooms, terrified of bumping or chipping them, swearing that as long as they lived, the hoe lived. I issued the ultimate command domineeringly. Before tonight, find a large clearing, bring all the coal, and clear the land for me, the whole village. Tomorrow morning, plant all the magic wheat along the water source. I want torches planted all around to ripen them overnight. After arranging the grand agricultural cause, I turned to look at Elder Eldon. Does the village have enough money to buy cattle and sheep? Prioritize buying cows, male or female. I'm going to launch animal husbandry in a big way. To build an iron bucket infinite water defense perimeter, leather armor sets are absolutely essential. Eldon reported respectfully. My lord, live cattle are strictly controlled, but Ashvale has one, and this lowly one has an old yellow cow at home, which makes exactly a pair. Good, everything is ready. All we need is the wind. I stood in the clearing and waved my hand grandly. All the straw-hate farmers of Oakhaven raised their stone hoes and shouted in unison, and a vigorous medieval infrastructure frenzy officially began. But I knew clearly in my heart that having food as a safety net was far from enough. This was the chaotic Dark Ages. The outside world was full of raiders and greedy lords who eat people without spitting out the bones. My villagers couldn't just know how to farm. They needed hard weapons in their hands. Make bows and arrows? Forget it. Training a qualified longbowman takes time and effort. I want to make repeating crossbows. No arm strength needed, no aiming talent required. As long as there are enough of them, firing blindly, raiders without iron armor won't even be able to get close. I immediately called over Elder Eldon and told him to take out all the tax money the village hadn't handed over, pick a few of the best fighters, and go to the city. Buy sheep for animal husbandry, and use all the remaining money to buy iron ingots. If there are no iron ingots, iron pots and iron farm tools will do. He'll melt them all down and forge repeating crossbows. Eldon handled things swiftly, picking the strongest man in the village, Piers, to lead the team. Before they left, I took out a few newly crafted wooden swords and the leather boots I fished up, distributing them to the group. Don't underestimate wooden swords. The sharpness of wooden swords produced by MC absolutely crushes the broken copper and rusty iron of this era. Remember, roll right back here immediately after buying the items. Don't wander around aimlessly outside. I stared into Piers' eyes and issued a strict order. And the most important point, think of any way possible. Tie up, invite a monastery scholar back for me. This bunch of uncultured boors in the village didn't even know who the current king was. I wanted to recruit a scholar to figure out the general trends of the world outside, and incidentally try to see if a librarian profession could be triggered so I could buy enchanted books. After arranging the errand team, I called on my number 1 follower, Arthur, and drilled straight into the forest for wild exploration. Boss, why are we rushing into the forest so urgently? Arthur carried a basket, looking around warily, afraid a wild boar would rush out and gore me. Nonsense, of course, to show you the world. I was too lazy to explain. I casually pulled out a long loaf of bread freshly crafted from magic wheat from my inventory and shoved it into his arms. You didn't have breakfast, right? Gnaw on this. Arthur froze, his fingers pinching the bread, sinking into the crust that was as soft as a cloud. He carefully brought it to his mouth and took a bite. The rich aroma of wheat mixed with the sweet taste of baking exploded in his mouth instantly. This boy suddenly stopped talking and stood perfectly still, frantically stuffing bread into his mouth. Tears pattered down his mud-streaked cheeks, smashing onto the green grass under his feet. Well, he cried from eating again. In this manating world, a full meal could make someone hand their life over to you. I sighed and handed over the half-eaten bread in my hand as well. Stop talking nonsense, you must finish what the boss leaves behind. If you don't eat it, you're not giving me face. Arthur wiped his tears, hugged the bread tightly to his chest, and said he would save it for his sister. The two of us continued to stroll forward. Along the way, stepping on mud, I climbed a 10-meter-tall oak tree to steal bird eggs, standing on a branch looking over the scenery. Seeing that I couldn't get down, I directly took out the iron bucket. Watch closely, Arthur. This move is called MLG water bucket. I leaped, and in the split second second before smashing into a meat paste, I threw a bucket of water at my feet. The water flow cushioned me, entirely unharmed. Up in the tree, Arthur's eyes almost dropped to the ground. After landing, I also found a red mushroom under a tree. Good stuff. This is excellent building material for making mushroom houses. I quickly stuffed it into my pocket. While Arthur and I were playing around in the forest, Pierre's team was experiencing true hell. They left my territory and stepped into the real world of the Great Famine. Half a mile down the road, there was not a trace of green. The dried riverbeds were full of bloody handprints left by refugees digging in the dirt, and the roadsides were entirely littered with incomplete bones gnawed by wild dogs. A few wandering, starving people, nothing but skin and bones, stared at Piers and the others with glowing green eyes. Had it not been for the wooden swords clenched in their hands, they would have rushed up and eaten them alive long ago. They hurried all the way to Ironhold with their hearts in their mouths. Outside the city gates, the Chutch's porridge-serving wooden sheds had long been empty. A guard said, "There is no more bread today," and wailing filled the area below. Those who starved to death were directly dragged to the mass graves, while the living lay numbly on the ground waiting to die. Piers and the others slipped some broken silver to bribe the city gate guards and snuck into the city. They asked everyone they met if there were any monastery scholars willing to go teach in the village. Food provided. As a result of asking around, the scholars in the city absolutely refused the moment they heard they had to leave the city. Leaving the city meant becoming rations for the rioters in the wilderness. Who would dare to go? Just as Piers and his group were anxious like ants on a hot pan, they ran heading into a squad of the city guard patrolling the streets. "What are you doing? Sneaking around? Throw them in the dungeon and peel their skin off." The leading city guard, Captain Gavin, drew his longsword and cursed. Piers and his friends felt their scalps tingle. Who would have known that the two guards next to him took a closer look and were scared out of their wits? These two were exactly the unlucky Baron's attendants who went to collect taxes in Oakhaven 2 days ago and were cursed by my words to become wild boars in your next life. Oh my God, my ancestors! The two guards turned deathly pale, grabbed Captain Gavin, and bowed deeply to Piers. "You two masters, please go ahead. We were blind, we'll get lost right now." Having narrowly escaped disaster, Piers and the others bought all the sheep and iron tools. Still unable to find a scholar, they had to bite the bullet and try their luck in the refugee slums outside the city. In the refugee gathering area outside the city, villager Colin held up dried salted fish and yelled, "We provide food, as long as you are a scholar who can read and write." A crowd of starving refugees with green glowing eyes crawled forward, pretending to be scholars to beg for food. Colin couldn't bear it and handed out the dried salted fish in his hand. Just as they were despairing and preparing to return to the village, a frail young man leaning on a wooden stick and hobbling forward stepped out. His name was Elwyn, a down-and-out monastery scholar. Following behind him was a burly, sharp-eyed, wandering mercenary named Braun. "He'll go with you." Elwyn was so hungry his vision went dark. Treating a dead horse like a living doctor, he agreed on the spot. With the recruitment task complete, Pierre's squad protected the sheep, brought the iron tools and the two newly recruited people, and rushed back. The smell of the dried salted fish had completely intensified the conflict. Hundreds of reedied starving refugees fixated on those two fat sheep, trailing far behind the squad like zombies. Halfway through the journey, a thug with a scar across his face squeezed out from the crowd of starving refugees. He pretended to kneel and beg for mercy, crying and shouting that he just wanted one bite of food, while making the sign of the cross and inching towards Colin. Scholar Elwyn noticed something was wrong and roared, "Look out!" The scar-faced man sprang up instantly. He pulled out a sharp piece of iron smeared with feces from behind his waist and thrust it straight at Colin's heart. In the nick of time, the mercenary Braun struck like lightning, a heavy punch smashing viciously into the scar-faced man's stomach, shattering his internal organs on the spot. The scar-faced man fell to the ground, twitched twice, and stopped moving. The strike instantly kicked the hornet's nest. They killed someone. Kill them. Grab the sheep and eat meat. Hundreds of starving refugees went completely mad, raising rocks and rusty machetes, baring their fangs and claws as they pounced. There were people coming from all directions. Piers, Colin, and the others stood back to back, tightly forming a circle, and wildly swung their wooden swords. The wooden swords were incredibly sharp, cutting down swath after swath, but there were too many starving people. They simply couldn't kill them all. Stamina depleted rapidly, and the defensive line looked like it was about to be broken. Put on the boots given by the Lord. Villager Dixon yanked off the leather boots on his feet and stuffed them into Braun's hands along with a wooden sword. Braun was stunned. These shoes were a full size smaller than his feet. How could he wear them? However, the moment the tips of his toes touched them, the leather boots seemed to come alive, instantly expanding and molding tightly to his feet. A magical holy relic? Braun was shocked. He didn't have time to think further. Putting on the leather boots and swinging the wooden sword, he crashed straight into the crowd like a fierce tiger descending a mountain. Sharp swords and blades hacked at the leather boots but couldn't even leave a white mark. Braun single-handedly bore more than half the pressure, killing until he was covered in blood. But there were simply too many starving people advancing wave upon wave. Countless bloody gashes were sliced into Colin and the others. Their clothes were torn, their stamina completely exhausted, and they fell to the ground one after another. The starving people laughed maniacally and raised their butcher knives. Today, all of you are staying to be our rations. Rumble, rumble. The ground suddenly began to tremble violently, as if an ancient behemoth was wildly galloping closer. The starving people couldn't stand steadily and fell to the ground one by one. Braun turned his head in horror to look. On the distant horizon, a massive behemoth standing 3 meters tall, forged entirely of pure iron, came crushing over with heavy steps. Its eyes flashed with a crimson light of fury. It was exactly the Iron Golem Titan. The moment it crossed the boundary of the territory, it instantly went berserk. Before the starving people could react, Titan had already charged into their formation. Those thick, pure iron arms swung violently, and the 4 or 5 starving people charging at the front were directly swatted flying into the sky. Their bones shattered completely in midair, and they crashed heavily onto the ground like ragged cloth sacks, killed instantly. Monster, run away! The starving people's courage shattered, screaming as they scattered and fled in all directions. But in front of Titan, running away was simply a joke. It took a massive stride, crushing a starving person's chest with one stomp. A slap came down, smashing both man and blade into meat paste. Pure crushing power, without any fancy tricks. This was a war machine born for slaughter. In the blink of an eye, severed limbs and broken arms scattered everywhere, and blood dyed the wasteland red. The remaining starving people fled without a trace, crying out for their parents. Braun trembled violently in fear, the wooden sword in his hand dropping to the ground with a clatter. Facing an irresistible monster like this, he didn't even have the courage to draw his sword. Titan, bathed in blood, turned its head and stared dead at Braun. Titan Colossus, don't hit him, he's with us. Dixon, paralyzed on the ground, frantically waved his hands and shouted. Titan understood, and the red light in its eyes gradually died out. It walked over to Piers and the others on legs covered in minced meat. Looking at their bodies covered in scars, Titan foolishly scratched its iron head, and out of its thick iron hands conjured a few delicate, red poppy flowers out of thin air, placing them gently in their hands. Braun swallowed a mouthful of bloody saliva. His worldview shattered into pieces. Just what kind of background do these country bumpkins have? That one called Lord Silas. Exactly what kind of terrifying existence is he? Meanwhile, in Oakhaven, I had just received Ashvale's representative, Thomas, and accepted the live cow he delivered. Then, from the mouth of Elder Eldon, I heard huge news. The rebel leader in the neighboring town, Cashin, was pushed to desperation by the Baron and was going to launch a riot tomorrow. This was the first shot of the peasant uprisings during the Great Famine. I immediately ordered that Oakhaven absolutely would not get involved in the rebellion, but would honestly farm and develop. With our small arms and legs, not even having assembled a single set of leather armor, fighting head-on with the Lord's regular knights was purely courting death. After sending the Elder away, I brought Arthur to the side of the base, preparing to show off my MC building skills, growing a giant mushroom house barehanded. No mycelium and no podzol? No problem for me. I dug a 2-block deep pit in the ground, jumped in, and sealed myself inside with dirt blocks above my head, creating an environment of absolute darkness. Then I planted the red mushroom I had just dug up in the forest at my feet, took out bone meal, and clicked frantically. Whoosh! A massive red mushroom shot up from the ground, instantly bursting the dirt pit and perfectly enveloping me within the spacious mushroom cap. Arthur screamed in terror outside, dug through the mushroom wall with his bare hands, and clawed me out. Seeing this giant mushroom villa that appeared out of thin air, his jaw almost dropped to the ground. See that, Arthur? As long as I want to, I can give every farmer in our village a mushroom house. This is a mobile fortress. I bragged triumphantly, immediately sending Arthur to call over a farmer who had changed professions to run a test. I stood in front of the giant mushroom house, happily sketching out the blueprint of the future block empire in my mind. Suddenly, a muffled vibration came from the ground beneath my feet. Titan was back. I turned my head with a smile, preparing to welcome the fully loaded purchasing squad. But when I clearly saw the scene before my eyes, the smile on my lips instantly froze. The 3-me turtle Titan, its normally smooth and indestructible iron skin, was covered in a series of horrific scratches and dents, and blood was dripping down from its iron arms. Tick-tock. Behind it, Piers, Colin, Dixon, my precious villagers who had just changed professions and could even trade for melon seeds. The clothes on their bodies were hacked into ribbons. Their flesh was curled back, and their entire bodies were covered in bloody gashes sliced open by sharp weapons, deep enough to see the bone. Everyone was supporting each other, swaying on their feet. My villagers got beaten. On my turf, the people under my protection were actually hacked into bloody gourds by outsiders. Ever since crossing over to this world, I had always adhered to the principle of quietly developing and not attacking unless attacked. But at this moment, an uncontrollable aura of violence surged straight to my brain. I was angry, truly angry. Rumble. The sky seemed to sense the creator's monstrous fury. The originally cloudless, clear sky was instantly and completely swallowed by pitch black, rolling storm clouds without any warning. The sky went dark. The sound of thunder shattered the firmament, like tens of thousands of giant dragons roaring in the clouds. Thick silver lightning tore across the sky, striking fiercely against the dry earth. A torrential downpour smashed down head-on without warning, instantly submerging the entire world under a curtain of water. The fierce wind turned into sharp blades, howling madly through the woods and the wasteland. The birds and beasts at the edge of the world lay on the ground trembling in fear, and even the most ferocious starving wolves let out whimpering cries. In the distant Ashvale, the villagers rushed out of their houses in terror, gazing at the terrifying thunderstorm dividing line in the direction of Oakhaven that looked like doomsday descending. Everyone's legs went weak, and they fell to their knees in the muddy water one after another. They all understood one thing, that Saint, living in seclusion deep in the mountains, was furious. "Whoever dares to touch my Silas villagers, I will have your whole village, people and ashes alike, thrown into the furnace." I stared deadly at the group of drowned rats before me. Villager Colin fell to his knees in the muddy water with a plop, frantically drawing crosses and praying. "My lord, calm your anger. We were surrounded by thugs in the wilderness. It was the Titan Colossus who unleashed a massacre and killed them all. All wiped out." My anger instantly subsided by more than half. "All right then, whoever dares to hit my people deserves to die." With a thought, I dismissed the thunderstorm, and the sky instantly cleared up. "Get up, all of you." I reached back and pulled out a huge pile of roasted fish still sizzling with oil, directly tossing them into their arms. Eat until you're stuffed." These weren't ordinary fish. These were roasted fish produced by the MC system. Once the hunger bar is full, they directly restore health. Dixon, who was starved to skin and bones, swallowed the fish in a few bites. A miracle happened. The sword wounds on his body that showed bone were visibly scabbing over, falling off, and growing tender new flesh at a speed visible to the naked eye. The newly arrived wandering mercenary Braun was watching on the side, his eyes almost popping out. He stared fixedly at Dixon's wounds, gulping frantically. Where in his life had he ever seen such divine magic? After eating and drinking his fill, I turned my gaze to the foul-smelling, unconscious scholar in Titan's arms. That was Elwyn, the employer Braun had desperately protected. The smell was too overpowering, simply more disgusting than goblin swill fermented for 10 years. "Titan, throw him on the ground." I pinched my nose in disgust, pulled out an iron bucket, and started milking the mother cow nearby. It instantly filled with fresh milk. "Pour it in," I ordered. In the laws of MC, there is no negative status effect that drinking a bucket of milk can't resolve. If there is, then drink 2 buckets. Titan roughly pried open Elwyn's mouth and poured the whole bucket down. Glug, glug, glug. The deathly gray color on this guy's face visibly regained a rosy hue. My future chief librarian was saved. I turned my head to look at Braun. This guy's combat value wasn't bad, and he was the perfect candidate for running errands. "Braun, there will be a rebel riot in Ironhold tomorrow. You go to the city and tie up a few people for me. A carpenter, a blacksmith, and herbalist, get me one of each." Braun dropped to one knee, his voice trembling. "As the Lord commands, I will go through fire and water." He catches on quick. I like this kind of employee who disregards his own life. But an emperor does not send hungry soldiers to war. I have to get him a house first. I called over the farmer Oswald, handed him a handful of bone meal, and pointed to the square dirt pit dug nearby. "Stand in the pit, use the method you use to grow magic wheat, and scatter the bone meal on the red mushroom. Remember, no matter what happens, keep your head down and don't move." Oswald followed the instructions trembling. As soon as the bone meal was scattered, boom! A giant red mushroom, 2 stories high, sprang up from the ground. I had Titan forcefully carve out a doorway in the mushroom stem and casually tossed out a wooden door to slap onto it. I also hung up an oak sign, "Mushroom Townhouse No. 1, Silas Limited Edition." I pointed at this purely natural, pollution-free giant mushroom villa and raised an eyebrow at Braun. "From now on, this is your house." Braun stared blankly at the massive red structure, his eye sockets instantly turning red. In this chaotic world, displaced and unable to even afford a full meal, now he actually had a home of his own. He dropped heavily to his knees, his forehead banging on the ground with loud thuds. This lowly life of bronze belongs to the Lord from now on. After settling the refugees, I turned and walked into my own backyard. Animal husbandry had to get going, taking out a large handful of eggs I had just scavenged. Without bothering to incubate them, I just smashed them wildly against the ground. Smack, smack, smack. The eggshells shattered, and over a dozen bright yellow little chicks popped straight out, running all over the place. The main feature is physical forced spawning, completely authentic. Next to the sheep pen, pulling out iron shears, I aimed at the only adult sheep. Snip, snip, and white wool dropped. I was just one piece of wool away from making a bed. I stared intensely at the little lamb nearby, frantically feeding it wheat to speed up its growth. "Grow faster, buddy. I'm waiting to sleep." Having sorted out the livestock, I looked up at the sky. The stars were brilliant. I wonder what the deep sea and outer space look like in this world. I pulled out an empty glass bottle and dove headfirst into the nearby water pool. I aimed the mouth of the bottle at my own mouth and sucked hard. No bubbles. Breathing was smooth. MC mechanics never deceive me. An empty bottle can provide oxygen underwater. If I build blocks all the way to outer space later, could I survive if I bring a glass dome? Never mind, I'm getting sidetracked. First, I need to make the village in front of me bigger and stronger. The next day, Ironhold. Outlaws raged outside the city, and panic filled the hearts of those within. The old physician Gideon sat in the old tree apothecary, looking at the streets full of patients with a bitter face. Medicinal herbs had long run out. In this world, the poor could only wait to die. Just then, Braun, wearing a set of leather armor I fished up, strode into the clinic with large steps. "Old sir, I have a miraculous medicine that can regrow flesh on bones and revive the dead. I would like to request you to come out of retirement." Gideon laughed out of anger. Regrow flesh on bones? Revive the dead? Is the knight here to make fun of this old man? Without a word of nonsense, Bronn pulled out a dagger. Swish! He viciously slashed a deep cut down to the bone on his own forearm. Blood instantly sprayed out. "You're crazy," Gideon exclaimed, hastily calling his son Galen to fetch styptic powder. Bronn merely waved his hand, taking out a bright red apple from his chest. Crunch! He took a massive bite, chewing and swallowing in large mouthfuls. In the next second, Gideon's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. He saw the terrifying knife wound on Bronn's arm visibly stop bleeding, shrink, and scab over. Finally, the blood scab fell off, revealing scar-free new skin. Dead silence. The entire clinic was so quiet you could only hear Gideon's heavy panting. He pounced over and firmly grasped Bronn's arm, rubbing it back and forth, tears streaming down his old face. Miracle medicine. It truly is a miracle medicine. To think such a holy relic exists in this world. Gideon looked in heartache at the remaining half apple, beating his chest in despair. What a sin. Just to prove a point, you actually ate half of it. Bronn stared at him, dropping the ultimate deal breaker. What if I told you, I still have miraculous medicine that can cure all diseases in the world? Can it cure the Black Death? Can. Gideon fell to his knees with a thud. Whatever you want, I will give, even if you want this old life of mine. Bronn stepped aside to avoid the bow. The Lord has invited you. Bring your family and follow me. The Lord? The one from the heavens? Gideon's brain buzzed, and he achieved complete enlightenment. Other than a god, who could produce something like this? But at the thought of the soon-to-be-breached city gates and the citizens filling the city, old Gideon steadfastly refused to leave. He wanted to leave his life in the clinic, to treat the poor. But he forced his son Galen to take the whole family, young and old, and the apprentices and follow Bronn. Just as the words faded, the sound of battle cries shook the sky outside the city. The rebel leader Bloodhound Cashin brought the rioters and blasted open the city gates. Kill the Baron. Open the granaries. The streets instantly turned into a pot of chaotic porridge. Bronn's group pushed carts filled with iron tools, bringing the physician and a group of blacksmiths, and charged out the city gates amidst the chaos. When the starving people defending the city saw they were pulling broken copper and rusty iron, they didn't even bother to care. They ran all the way, heading straight for my village. Meanwhile, in the mushroom house, Elwyn rubbed his throbbing head and blearily opened his eyes. What entered his vision was an incredibly thick cylinder, and the surrounding walls were red and felt soft to the touch. He pushed the door open and went out, his entire body freezing on the spot. Behind him was a giant red mushroom, 2 stories high. Hanging on the door was the sign Silas Limited Edition. He didn't eat a poisonous mushroom, so how was he hallucinating? He slapped himself in the face, causing severe pain. It really wasn't a dream. He cautiously walked into the village. Hanging under the eaves of every household were dried, half-meter-long fish. In a world of severe drought, water shortage, and consecutive years of famine, this village actually had more fish and meat than they could eat. The even more terrifying part came later. Hiding in a corner, he watched with his own eyes as a 3-meter turtle iron lump magic golem lifted a perfectly square block of dirt with one hand. Villagers placed the dirt on a wooden stick and pushed it all the way. In the distance, villagers wearing straw hats held hot, roasted fish that appeared out of nowhere and swallowed them in huge bites. Elwyn completely went mad. Just what kind of underworld hell was this? Following the village road, he felt his way to a small lake. He saw me sitting on the bank, leisurely casting a fishing rod. The lake water was crystal clear, surrounded by a ring of wooden houses stacked together without any adhesive. He took a deep breath, stepped forward, and placed his hand over his chest to bow. I am Elwyn, thanking your excellency for the grace of saving my life. I patted the grass beside me. Sit, fish with me for a while. He sat down rigidly, his eyes constantly glancing towards the water. What do you think of this village? I asked casually. His expression was complex. Living and working in peace, abundant food, comparable to the legendary Garden of Eden. But right now the world is in chaos, and rioters are rising everywhere. Your Excellency's piece of fat meat will sooner or later be eyed by lords and bandits. This guy had some skill. His insight was sharp. What do you want to say? Elwyn straightened his back. If you want the paradise to stand forever, you must train an army and establish laws. I may be untalented, but I am willing to share your Excellency's burdens. He painted a nice picture, but I felt there was no light in his eyes, deadly still, like an ascetic ready to be martyred at any moment. I had to show him something impressive. Right at this moment, the fish bobber sank heavily. I flicked my wrist. Whoosh! A large fish burst out of the water, directly transforming into a blinding golden light in midair, instantly drilling into my body. Elwyn turned into stone on the spot, his jaw almost dropping onto his instep. Fish are caught like this, willingly turning into light. I ignored his shock, stood up, and took him to the chicken pen. I grabbed a handful of wheat seeds and fed them to the chicks. Swish! The chicks instantly inflated, growing into large hens. They flapped their wings and laid an egg. Elwyn's legs gave way, and he almost knelt down, creating something out of nothing. The methods of the gods. I turned my head to stare at him, my voice bewitching. These chickens grow up in a few days and lay eggs without needing to be fed. As long as there are enough of them, no one in the world will ever go hungry again. I pointed at this blocky world. Do you want to follow me to see a world absolutely devoid of hunger? Your name will be carved on the monument of history. A world devoid of hunger. These few words, like a heavy hammer, viciously smashed the deadly stillness in Elwyn's heart. His eyes instantly erupted with a fanaticism like that of a starving wolf. He fell to his knees, fervently kissing the ground ground at my feet, his voice hoarse and trembling. I am willing to dedicate my life to you, to manage the world for you, my lord. Done. Top-tier domestic affairs official, in the bag. Just as I finished painting the big picture, a commotion came from the village entrance. Braun had brought the people back. Carts were loaded full of iron tools, followed by cowering blacksmiths and the physician Galen. I walked over with large strides. When the blacksmiths saw me, they fell to their knees one after another. I swept my gaze over them. Who knows how to build crossbows? I do too. The blacksmiths scrambled, afraid that if they were a step too slow, they would be driven out of this Garden of Eden that lacked no food. What about armor? We can do that too. Good heavens, all-around talents. The Baron was really squandering his resources. I raised a hand to quiet the crowd's clamor and announced, in the coming chaotic times, there will only be more and more rioters. I want you to pick up weapons and protect yourselves. Blacksmiths will change professions to fletchers and weaponsmiths to forge weapons. Everyone train with pay. As soon as these words came out, the villagers of Oakhaven completely boiled over. Working for the Lord doesn't require money. Just provide food. Whoever dares to touch the Lord, we will fight with our lives to hack him to death. Emotions ran high, and the blacksmiths were so frightened they trembled all over, thinking they had entered some fanatical cult den. I couldn't be bothered to care what they thought. I turned to look at the physician Galen. I beckoned Titan over. Go, squeeze a bucket of milk for him. This is the miracle medicine that can cure all diseases. Let him study it slowly on his own. Galen took the iron bucket with trembling hands, treating it as a supreme treasure. After assigning tasks, I piled the iron tools next to the crafting table. Grunt work like forging iron and making job blocks would wait until tomorrow. I went back to the sheep pen and stared at the sheep that had eaten its fill of wheat and regrown a coat of white wool. Shears served. Snip, snip, wool acquired. 3 wooden planks, 3 pieces of wool placed into the crafting table. A bright red bed appeared in my hand. I walked into the house, slapped the bed onto the ground, and my whole body fell stiffly onto it. Laying on the bright red bed crafted from 3 pieces of wool, I comfortably closed my eyes. When I wake up tomorrow, my blocky army will officially mobilize. MC's bed is the eternal god. There's no annoyance of insomnia. As long as you lie on it, close your eyes and open them, it's instantly broad daylight, waking up immediately, full of energy. I pushed open the door and began to go all out. I threw all the iron tools brought back from Ironhold into the crafting table and broke them down into iron ingots. Next, I took out sugar cane to craft paper, then used paper and leather to craft books. Wooden planks, wooden slabs, bookshelves. After a flurry of rapid operations, the librarian's exclusive job block lectern was done. With this thing, as long as I have good luck, I can trade enchanted books from the villagers and equip my weapons with magical attributes. Next, the stonemason stonecutter and the grindstone for polishing weapons landed one by one. But when it came to the fletcher's fletching table, I got stuck. The fletching table requires 2 pieces of flint. This thing only drops by mining gravel, and the drop rate is quite touching. Where is there a riverbed nearby? I checked the sky. It was exactly midnight. If I wasn't sleeping, no one else was going to sleep either. Carrying the iron bucket, I went to the backyard to find the old yellow cow and milked a bucket of fresh milk as a backup. Passing by the mushroom town, the old farmer Oswald was leading a group of farmers in planting giant mushroom houses in the dark. The newly joined blacksmiths with their stuffed bellies obediently lined up waiting to be assigned houses. I went to Arthur's house and banged on the door. Arthur, not asleep yet, are you? The door quickly opened, and Arthur rubbed his eyes, yawning. Boss, what's up? Let's go. I'm taking you on a night exploration. We'll dig some gravel on the way and abduct those few giant bees we saw last time to work for us. Without a second word, Arthur washed his face, grabbed a basket and a dagger, and followed me. With him leading the way, we quickly found a dry sandy area. I swung my stone shovel, outputting damage frantically, dug wildly, and finally gathered enough 6 pieces of flint, while conveniently digging a whole stack of sand to take back for smelting glass. Then, we drilled into the forest where we found the beehive last time. Provoking bees in MC is an extremely suicidal act. To prevent being stung full of bumps by these biogiant bees, I took out a campfire and placed it directly below the beehive. Once the smoke and fire started, the bees instantly became docile. I took out my shears, gave the beehive a snip, and 3 honeycombs were safely in my hands. 3 honeycombs are exactly enough to craft an artificial beehive. Right next to us flew a wild giant bee over half a meter long, chubby and very odd-air-cably stupid. I casually picked a wild flower and handed it over, and it immediately buzzed over, docilely nudging the palm of my hand. Arthur watched from the side with shining eyes, swallowed hard, and boldly reached out to touch the bee's furry head. After confirming it was safe, he grinned from ear to ear. Hold the flower and lead it back to the village. I stuffed the wild flower into Arthur's hand. With the bees pollinating, the growth speed of the farmland crops will absolutely take off immediately. I followed behind Arthur, listening to the roaring sound emitted by the half-meter-long giant bee ahead, in a great mood. As soon as I returned to the front of my small wooden cabin, I saw the newly recruited chief domestic official, Elwyn, respectfully standing guard outside the door. Seeing the giant bee following behind, Elwyn felt his scalp tingle, and his face instantly went pale, but he gritted his teeth and didn't take half a step back, pretending to be calm as he placed a hand over his chest to bow. Lord Silas. Not sleeping in the middle of the night, did something happen? I locked the bee into the wooden compartment and turned to ask him. My lord, Braun brought back news that the rebel Cashin has already conquered Ironhold. Elwyn's tone was grave. The king's regular night order will soon come to suppress the rebel party. Once the knights cannot find Cashin, it is highly likely they will target our village to slaughter innocents and claim credit. The matter of training the army Brooks no delay, then train. I casually slapped the newly made fletching table onto the ground. I wish to appropriate the divine fish on the wooden table for the purpose of training the troops. I wonder if my lord, use them as you please. I waved my hand. That pile of roasted fish was meant for everyone to eat anyway. Don't be stingy. Early the next morning, as soon as I walked out of the wooden cabin, I was shocked by the scene on the distant training ground. John was leading the newly transitioned Fletchers, teaching the villagers how to use crossbows handbion. Aiming, loading, firing, strictly by the book. This was somewhat normal. Shifting my gaze, the art style on the mercenary bronze side was simply like underworld hell. I saw dozens of villagers take off their upper garments, their eyes bloodshot, screaming madly like they were injected with chicken blood. God protects us. Following that, two people stood facing each other, holding wooden or stone swords, and aimed at the other person's body without putting up any defense, stabbing viciously. Squish. Blood spurted wildly. The villagers turned deathly pale from the pain, gritting their teeth to endure. If anyone dared to close their eyes and dodge, Braun went up and cursed them out. They endured until Braun blew the whistle, and these ruthless men immediately threw down their weapons, grabbed the roasted divine fish nearby, and took large bites to tear and swallow. Once the hunger bar was full, the deep wounds that showed bone were visibly healing and scabbing over rapidly. As soon as they were fully healed, they picked up their swords and continued stabbing each other. No defense, only offense, trading a life for a life. This was not training an army at all. This was mass-producing berserkers, with the divine fish providing a safety net to save their lives and the leather boots buffing their defense. This madman Braun directly abandoned all blocking routines, teaching only one move: press forward indomitably and smash the enemy's vital spots. If this troop was brought out, never mind the rioting rebels, even if the barbarian tribes from the extreme north came, they would have 2 pieces of flesh viciously bitten off by this group of fearless lunatics. While the village was frantically churning out troops, 10 miles outside, Ironhold's Knight Commander Wulfric was riding on his warhorse, his face so gloomy it could drip water. He was ordered by the Baron to encircle and suppress the rebel Cashin, but ended up catching air. Not only did he fail to catch the man, but the army's rations were also nearly depleted. On a hot day, he was so thirsty his throat was smoking. He snatched a water skin from an accompanying laborer and drank it all in one gulp. The laborer fainted from thirst, and he sneered disdainfully, "Idiot, do you even deserve to drink water?" Unlucky, Wulfric calculated in his mind. He had to find a scapegoat so he could report back to the Baron. The scout exploring ahead rolled and crawled back, dropping to one knee. "Report, Commander, a village has been discovered ahead, numbering over 100. Defenses are extremely weak. They are all old, weak, sick, and disabled, with only a few farmers in broken leather armor at the village entrance. The terrain is somewhat strange, but it absolutely cannot stop our iron hooves." "Good, excellent. Cashin, this knight has finally caught you." Wulfric trembled with excitement. Who cares if they are refugees or rebels? As long as he cuts off these 100 heads and takes them back to the Baron's domain, he will have supreme military merit. "Whole army, don your armor. Cavalry, charge with me. Leave no survivors." At dusk, the sun set in the west. The rumbling sound of horse hooves shattered the peace of Oakhaven. Wulfric took the lead, bringing dozens of heavy cavalry, sweeping toward the village entrance like a black gale. Looking at the villagers lined up in a row at the village entrance, unable to even hold their weapons steady, a cruel sneer curled at the corner of his mouth. "Accelerate, crush them. 30 paces, 20 paces, 10 paces." The snorting of the warhorses could be clearly heard, and the sand dust almost blew into the villagers' faces. Just as the cavalry was about to smash the villagers to pieces, the dozen or so farmers wearing straw hats standing at the very front unhurriedly took out bone meal, aimed it at the mushrooms in the deep pits at their feet, and gently scattered it. Boom, boom, boom. More than a dozen giant red mushrooms, 2 stories high, sprang up from the ground. The massive red caps instantly connected into a solid sheet, firmly building an absolutely insurmountable red high wall right in front of the cavalry charge. Wulfric's eyes bulged, and his soul was frightened away. Whoa! He desperately pulled the reins. The warhorse let out a shrill neigh, its front hooves rearing high. The massive inertia of the cavalry charge caused the warhorses to instantly lose their balance and crash over. Bang, bang, bang! The warhorses crashed into the wall, riders tumbled, and horses fell. The sound of breaking bones and screams blended into one. Wulfric was violently thrown out and smashed heavily onto the ground. If it weren't for the heavy knight armor he was wearing, this hit alone would have taken his life. Dark magic. There are wizards. The infantry in the rear saw this scene and their courage shattered. Wulfric struggled to his feet, drew his long sword, pointed it at the mushroom wall, and roared frantically, "Charge! All of you charge! Hack these demonic things to pieces. Double military pay for every kill. Retreat and it's a death sentence." Dozens of infantrymen with red eyes charged at the mushroom wall, hacking wildly. Red mushroom flesh flew everywhere. The thick mushroom wall was finally carved with a large hole. Before the soldiers had time to cheer, they saw a terrifying behemoth standing behind the hole. A pale body, over 3 meters tall, with arms as thick as stone pillars. The iron golem Titan was in position. Titan took heavy steps, rumbling through the mushroom wall, and stood completely motionless in front of hundreds of enemy troops. Dead silence. A reckless archer, trembling all over, raised his longbow and shot an arrow at Braun. Clang! The arrow accurately hit Bron's iron helmet. A crisp sound of striking iron rang out, and the refined steel arrowhead instantly bent and curled, falling to the ground powerlessly. Titan was angry. He suddenly strode out with his long legs, crashing into the enemy formation like a berserk heavy chariot. The soldiers blocking the front were directly rammed so hard they spat blood and flew backward. Titan rushed to that archer, grabbed him by the waist with one hand, swung his iron arm in a full circle, and violently tossed him up into the sky. Swoosh! Amidst shrill screams, that soldier flew directly over a dozen meters high into the sky, turning into a small black duck. This toss completely crushed the psychological defense of all the kingdom's troops. Monster, run! Hundreds of regular soldiers instantly panicked, discarding their helmets and armor, crying out for their parents, scattering and fleeing in all directions. Wulfric ripped off his heavy helmet and mixed into the crowd, running for his life. Bronn sneered coldly, "Piers, that scum who took off his helmet is the commander. Catch him. Leave it to me." Piers threw away his stone sword, picked up a wooden sword, and chased out like a gust of wind. The defensive power of the full leather armor set was more than enough to deal with this broken copper and rusty iron. Seeing Piers getting closer and closer, a die-hard confidant next to Wulfric suddenly turned around, gripped his knight's sword tightly with both hands, and viciously stabbed toward Piers' throat. Piers didn't even dodge. He puffed out his chest and met the sword point. Ding! The long sword stabbed onto Piers' leather chestplate as if striking a solid rock, the blade instantly bending exaggeratedly. The confidant's face was filled with despair. Piers took advantage of the momentum and swung his wooden sword, knocking him out, and continued his mad pursuit of Wulfric. Wulfric couldn't run anymore. He fell to his knees with a plop, frantically drawing crosses and begging for mercy. "Master, spare my life. Just let me go like a fart. I have gold coins in my territory. I'll give them all to you." Piers snorted coldly. "I'm not killing you. Lord Silas ordered us to capture you alive." Half an hour later, the battle ended. The escaping kingdom soldiers mostly had their legs broken by Titan, their wails filling the plains. Several villagers carrying roasted fish walked up to the soldiers with broken legs, commanding coldly, "Eat. If you don't eat, we'll slaughter you right now." The wounded soldiers desperately grabbed the roasted fish, shedding tears as they swallowed. An intense pain shot from their broken legs. But a few seconds later, the pain receded. They touched their thighs, and the broken bones had actually miraculously healed completely. These veteran kingdom soldiers were completely dumbfounded. Breaking their legs and then healing them with magic, what kind of living hell behavior was this? They obediently placed their hands behind their backs and limped into the dungeon used for detention. At this time, I stood on the high ground, watching this scene coldly. The Ironhold's Lord's army had simply rotted to the core. I hadn't even built a city wall, afraid of provoking you. As a result, you didn't even say hello and directly charged with heavy cavalry to slaughter innocents and claim credit. Since you don't value the lives of refugees, don't blame me for treating you as wild monsters to grind experiments. I quickly dug a basement and installed an iron door with a lever. Bronn escorted Knight Commander Wulfric over. I unequipped my leather gear and looked at Wulfric with a half smile. "You're that idiotic commander who brought cavalry to throw their lives away?" Wulfric scrambled over and threw himself at me. "Lord Saint, the ignorant are guiltless. Please spare my life. Don't worry, I won't kill you. I'm just doing a little experiment." I waved my hand, and Bronn pushed all of them into the iron doors. I pulled open the iron door and walked down the steps. The only sound left in the basement was the chattering of teeth from extreme fear. I opened the glass cell, grabbed Wulfric by the back of his neck armor, and hauled him out of the dungeon. In the clearing, I took out a water bucket and poured a single block of water. Then I stepped onto a wooden plank and kept jumping and placing. 10 meters, 20 meters, 100 meters. I took Wulfric pulling straight up frantically, building a 2x2 suspended small platform at 100 meters high. Wulfric clung dead to the wooden planks, pissing and shitting himself. Knight Commander, the last experiment. I stood high in the sky, the gale howling. The only way to get down is to jump into that block of water directly below. A precise water drop, and you won't die. You'll go first. As soon as the words fell, I pushed off the wooden planks hard, my entire body leaping off the platform like a shooting star. Nothing is true. Everything is permitted. Awoo! The weightless sensation of falling made my adrenaline surge. On the ground, Elder Eldon's pipe dropped in shock. Lord Silas fell from the sky. Plop! I accurately smashed into the water pit. Water splashed everywhere. Without being smashed to pieces, I stood up from the water pit completely unharmed, my clothes not even damp. The villagers watched closely from 100 meters away, dropping to their knees in a massive wave, so full of awe they prostrate completely. Arthur rushed up to me, panting heavily. I smiled, patted him on the shoulder, and pointed at the suspended wooden planks in the sky. "Arthur, is it exciting? Next time, it'll take you flying too." I shook the water droplets off my head, looking at the villagers kneeling all around, feeling absolutely thrilled. Arthur ran over panting, his eyes almost popping out. I patted his shoulder, telling him to quickly disperse the watching villagers, while I turned around and walked back into the dungeon. The iron door pulled open. The group of captive soldiers from Ironhold inside shuddered all over, shrinking tightly into the corner. Seeing me walk in completely unharmed by myself, they all understood perfectly in their hearts their domineering knight commander was probably dead beyond saving. I took out a few wooden swords from my inventory and threw them onto the ground with a clang. "You step forward." I randomly pointed to a yellow-faced infantryman with a scar on his face. The yellow-faced infantryman's eyes rolled back, and he almost passed out. The people next to him reacted quickly, desperately pinching his philtrum, forcefully waking him up. No one wanted to go up and take the sword for him. The infantryman crawled over trembling, knocking his head loudly loudly, "Lord Silas, please just hack me to death. Cut the crap," I shouted coldly. "Pick up the sword, use all your strength, and stab me." The infantryman was so terrified he retched sour acid, but he also knew resisting would lead to a worse death. He gritted his teeth, closed his eyes, let out a loud roar, grabbed the wooden sword, and stabbed it viciously into my chest. After stabbing, he immediately let go, rolled and crawled back to the corner, frantically drawing crosses and praying. I expressionlessly pulled out the wooden sword. The wound brought out a cluster of red pixel squares. I looked down at my health bar. It lost 2 bars. The wooden sword damage is 4 points, which is exactly 2 hearts. The damage calculation is normal. "You, take the stone sword and stab me." I pointed to the next person. The second person stabbed me with the stone sword, losing 2.5 bars. I basically figured out the damage scaling. Next is the final testing step. I pulled out a red apple and took a bite. My hunger bar instantly filled, and my health bar rapidly recovered to full. "You 3, take your weapons and stab me simultaneously. Hurry!" The 3 desperately raised their swords and thrust them into my body at the same time. The first sword pierced, the health bar reduced. Immediately after, the second and third swords pierced, but my health bar didn't budge an inch. I guessed right, invincibility frames. In the mechanics of MC, for half a second after taking damage, the player is in an absolute state of invincibility, immune to all subsequent damage. With this feature, even if I face an army of thousands firing 10,000 arrows simultaneously in the future, I don't have to worry about being instantly one-shot. "Bold madman, how dare you hurt Lord Silas?" A loud roar suddenly came from outside the dungeon door. The mercenary Braun, eyes blue-dread, charged in like a mad bull, drawing his sword ready to hack these 3 ruffian soldiers alive, daring to stab the saint right in front of him. How could this be tolerated? "Braun, stop!" I hurriedly shouted to stop him. Braun slammed the brakes and fell to the ground, rolling and crawling over, so anxious his eyes turned red. "My lord, are you all right?" I told them to stab me, just doing a magical experiment. I waved my hand. Braun glared viciously at the 3 paralyzed captives. The 3 had already closed their eyes, waiting for death, probably cursing in their hearts. "If you want to kill us, then kill us. What's the point of this demonic ritual entrapment?" Walking out of the dungeon, the domestic official Elwyn was waiting for me at the door with a parchment ledger. "Lord Silas, all the surplus wheat has been stored in the warehouse." He respectfully handed over the list. I glanced at the granary and froze. The basement was packed full, entirely filled with golden wheat ears. "It's only been a few days. How did we burst out with so much food? At what percentage of tax did you collect this?" I frowned and asked. Elwyn answered cautiously, 90%. "If my lord is dissatisfied, we will immediately go back and make up the remaining 0.5%. "How much?" 90%. "What kind of tyrant's living hell tax rate is this?" I was directly silenced by it. "Too much." I waved my hand. "From now on, just pay 60%. Leave the rest for the villagers themselves." "How can just having enough to eat be enough? Shouldn't they get a few sets of new clothes and save some money to go to the city to buy things?" Elwyn snapped his head up, his face full of shock. "In this dark age of consecutive years of famine, where the king's taxes forced serfs to sell their sons and daughters, my taking a 60% tax rate actually made me an incarnation of a god saving them from misery in their eyes." I ignored his shock, waved my hand, and collected all the wheat from the full warehouse into my infinite inventory, preparing to use it to trade for emeralds with the job-changed farmers. The next day, I had someone set up a high platform at the village entrance. The old and young of the entire village lined up according to their job blocks, standing in a massive, dense crowd. "Piers, step forward," I shouted loudly. Piers ran onto the stage with a foolish smile. "You have worked the hardest recently. This is your reward." I pulled out 2 torches that would never extinguish, along with a red apple, and shoved them into his hands. Piers received them with trembling hands. "This is an inextinguishable magical fire. If planted in the field, the wheat can grow wildly even at night. One sniff of this apple prolongs life." "Titan." I snapped my fingers. The 3-me turtle iron golem led the dairy cow over, squeezed a bucket of fresh milk, and aimed it directly at Piers' mouth, pouring it in. Glug glug glug. MC's milk cures all illnesses and clears all negative status effects. As the milk went down his stomach, Piers' eyes, originally suffering from severe night blindness, instantly cleared. He looked around, and even in the dark corners, he could see with absolute clarity. "Thank the Lord for the blessing." Piers knelt on one knee in excitement, tears bursting from his eyes. The over 1,000 villagers below the stage were green with envy. I followed the merit list, handing out apples, giving out torches, and pouring milk one by one. After giving out the rewards, I turned around and went straight back into the house. As a god, I have to maintain a sense of mystery. After giving out the welfare, I withdraw, leaving them to their own excitement. As soon as I left, Braun stood on the high platform, looking at the captured militia below. Last night, a few captives escaped under the cover of darkness. These people were hereditary conscripts of the Baron's territory. If one person escapes, the whole family is implicated. They were afraid of implicating their families, so they insisted on escaping back no matter what. Last night someone ran away. The Lord knows everything. Braun spoke coldly. "The Lord said he won't force you to stay. Now, those who want to leave, step forward, receive 3 days of dry rations, and get the hell out." Complete dead silence. No one dared to be the bird that stuck its head out. The Lord's word is law. Last chance, if you don't leave, from now on you are a person of this village. If you dare to betray, it's a dead end. Finally, a man gritted his teeth and stepped out. Braun actually had someone stuff a bag of dry rations to him. The The man dropped to his knees, kowtowed 3 times toward my house, turned around, and drilled into the forest. With the first one came a second. Soon, half the people had left. The remaining captives looked at the dry rations in their hands, then looked at the endless supply of divine fish and clean water in the village, gritted their teeth, and nailed themselves to the spot. In the kingdom, there wasn't even enough food to eat, and families had long starved to death. Staying here, following the saint, means meat to eat. Brom nodded in satisfaction. This batch of people who stayed, after this wave of obedience testing, had completely turned into Oakhaven's diehard loyalists. Just as Oakhaven was frantically churning out troops and hoarding grain, on the wasteland less than 20 miles away from the village, an army of 1,000 raiders was sweeping over like a swarm of locusts. The leader of this group was named Cashin, nicknamed the Griffin. This group didn't deserve to be called a rebel army. They were just a bunch of animals who killed people and ate flesh. Cashin forced newly captured able-bodied men to slice open their own biological fathers' throats with a knife as a pledge of allegiance. Without food in the drought, they called captured living humans two-legged sheep, eating them as military rations while they marched. Boss, straight ahead is Oakhaven. A confidant pointed at the faintly visible silhouette of the village in the night. Cashin's face was full of ferocity. Drive those refugee two-legged sheep to the front as meat shields. Today, regardless of whether it's a wealthy man or a baron inside, rob them of everything. Kill the men, keep the women, throw the children in the pot. Midnight. Clang, clang, clang. The alarm bell in Oakhaven's watchtower rang frantically. The villagers practiced retreating into the basement for shelter. Wearing iron armor, I strode up to the newly built 3-meter dirt wall at the village entrance. Outside the wall, torches lit up the sky. A dense mass of raiders drove unarmed old, weak, sick, and disabled people, surging toward the dirt wall. They used living humans as shields, pressing closer step by step. Braun stood behind the main gate, looking at the crying refugees outside, his eyes blue dread. Compassion does not control an army. Once the refugees were allowed to rush into the gates, the raiders would take the opportunity to flood in, and the old and young of the entire village would have to die. Open the gates. Braun drew his wooden sword and let out a furious roar. The lever was pulled down, and the iron doors crashed open. Over 100 Oakhaven militiamen, wearing leather armor and holding wooden swords, charged out like berserkers descending a mountain. The raiders all laughed. 100 people, holding wooden swords, playing house here, but upon engaging, the raiders' smiles instantly froze on their faces. The wooden swords in the villagers' hands chopped against the raiders' iron blades, surprisingly throwing sparks everywhere, incredibly sharp. Not only that, the leather armor on the villagers was as hard as iron, completely uncuttable. Right at this moment, some villagers looked up and saw me standing on the dirt wall. Lord Silas is watching us. God protects us. Immune to all magic. This shout directly ignited the fanaticism of the entire militia camp. This group of newly transitioned villagers completely had their brains shut down, instantly transforming into medieval Spartan berserkers. They completely abandoned all defenses. A raider stabbed a knife into a villager's heart, and the villager didn't even frown, grinning to reveal a bone-chilling smile, backhanded a swing with his sword, and chopped the raider's head off. Suffered a fatal wound? Don't be afraid. The comrade next to him immediately yanked him to the back, pried his mouth open, and shoved a fragrant piece of divine fish inside. A miracle visible to the naked eye occurred. That knife wound piercing the heart, the severed intestines, in the moment of swallowing the fish meat, writhed and healed frantically. In just 3 to 5 seconds, the severely wounded villager jumped to his feet, roaring as he charged into the enemy formation again. One villager had his ear sliced off by a raider's knife. He didn't even look at the raider, bent down to pick up the ear and shoved it into his pocket, then Reedy stabbed the raider completely through. Then he retreated to the rear, stuck the dropped ear onto the wound, chewed a bite of fish meat, and the severed ear healed instantly. The raiders all went crazy from watching. What the heck kind of war is this? This is clearly soloing a hell difficulty dungeon. Can't be beaten to death, can't be hacked apart, stabbed through the heart, and can still resurrect on the spot. Demons. They are monsters from the abyss. Run away. They're not human at all. Thousands of murderous raiders had their courage completely shattered by 100 berserkers. Dropping their weapons, they turned and fled crying for their parents. Trampled, shoved, more died under the feet of their own people than were hacked to death. Trash. A bunch of trash. The raider boss Cashin watched his routed subordinates, furious to the point of splitting his eyes. He shoved aside the confidant next to him and snatched a longbow. He used to be a sharpshooter. He stared dead at me standing on the dirt wall under the firelight. That's the guy. As long as he dies, this group of lunatics will definitely collapse on their own. Die for me. Cashin's face was full of ferocity, drawing the bow and knocking an arrow, the bowstring pulled to a full moon. Twang. The sharp arrow tore through the night wind, heading straight for my face. Arthur, who had been guarding my side all along, changed his expression drastically, his mind going completely blank, and lunged forward to use his physical body to block the arrow for me. Get back here, you. I grabbed the back collar of Arthur's clothes and jerked him backward, my left hand smoothly raised up. A heavy MC shield crafted from iron ingots and wooden planks instantly blocked in front of me. Clang. The refined steel arrowhead smashed violently into the shield and bounced right off, not even chipping off a piece of wood. I casually flicked Arthur on the forehead. What are you blocking for? Couldn't you just push me away? Next time don't catch arrows with your face. Oh, Arthur held his head, looking pitiful. Braun under the city wall saw this scene, his soul flying out of his body in terror. Someone dared to shoot a sneak arrow at Lord Saint. Catch that guy with the bow. Chop him into pieces. Braun roared frantically. The militiamen went completely berserk, chasing the raiders and biting like mad dogs. I sneered coldly, swapped to iron boots equipped full iron armor. Arthur, go warm a cup of ale for me. I rolled my neck, emitting popping bone sounds. He'll be right back. Before the words finished echoing, I leapt directly down from the 3-meter high dirt wall. Raider boss Cashin was desperately fleeing. Suddenly, he heard an extremely terrifying sound of wind breaking above his head. Boom! A black silhouette wearing heavy armor descended from the sky, smashing heavily onto the empty ground more than 10 meters in front of him. Dust flew, and warm liquid splashed all over his face. Cashin reached up and wiped, his hand full of sticky, fresh blood. He looked closely. The thing smashed on the ground wasn't a rock at all, but one of his raider thugs. That person fell from a high altitude of more than 10 meters. All his bones shattered completely, already turning into a puddle of mush. Cashin stiffly turned his head. By the moonlight, he saw the most terrifying scene of his life. That lord wearing iron armor was as fast as a flash of lightning. He grabbed a fleeing raider with one hand, like swinging a sack, spun in a circle on the spot, and abruptly let go. That person screamed as he flew dozens of meters high into the sky, transforming into a human cannonball, smashing heavily into the crowd. Live humans constantly fell from the sky. That wasn't all. I rushed to the side of the road and hugged the trunk of a large tree with both hands. No dirt splash, absolutely no logic or common sense at all. An entire tree directly transformed into a giant block model and was lifted over my head with one hand. Boom, boom, boom. I ran wildly across the earth, holding the tree like a humanoid bulldozer. With every step I took, the ground trembled. Cashin's legs went soft, completely collapsing on the ground. A warm patch spread in his crotch. He pissed himself. Monster, definitely a mane-eating titan from mythology. I walked up to him and casually tossed the large tree in my hand to the side. Rumble. The giant tree hit the ground, kicking up a sky full of dust. At this time, a system prompt popped up before my eyes. Status effect gained. Hero of the village I. Duration, 2 days. All trade prices reduced by 30. Beautiful. Just when I wanted to go on a shopping spree, a discount coupon gets delivered right to my door. A few minutes later, the battle was completely over. Mercenary Braun escorted those captured raiders for interrogation. After listening to the refugees' accusations, Braun ran over to report to me with a livid face. Eating people, slaughtering villages, forcing a son to kill his biological father. Listening to Braun's report, the murderous intent in my heart could no longer be suppressed. These animals were 10,000 times more disgusting than that greedy knight Wulfric. I feel it would dirty my land to even keep them as serfs in the village. Kill them all. My eyes were icy cold, devoid of any warmth. Leave not a single one. However, keep the leader for me. A few militiamen pinned down the raider boss Cashin and dragged him in front of me. Knowing he couldn't survive, he decided to just act recklessly. Glaring viciously at me, he gathered a mouthful of bloody phlegm, about to spit it on me. So what if I call you my granddaddy? If you have the guts, hack me to death. The militiaman next to him smashed the pommel of his sword into his face, shattering half his teeth. I crouched down and looked at him with a smile. Pretty tough mouth, huh? I patted his cheek. I heard your nickname is the Griffin? Cashin glared dead at me. I stood up, pointed at the boundless night sky above, my voice as light as saying goodnight. Since you're called a griffin, then, have you ever experienced what it truly feels like to fly in the sky? I stared at the bandit leader Cashin coughing up blood on the ground, a cold sneer curling my lips. This animal was known as the Griffin, killing people and eating flesh. His bones were quite tough, spewing shit from his mouth, cursing at me. Facts proved that human mouths are simply not as hard as my blocks. I didn't waste words with him. I grabbed his back collar with one hand and frantically placed wooden planks under my feet. 10 meters, 50 meters, 100 meters, piercing straight into the clouds. Reaching 100 meters high, I purposely extended a few blocks horizontally outward and finally placed a completely transparent block of glass. I kicked Cashin onto it. All excess blocks were knocked away. In the entire high altitude, only this single, isolated transparent glass block remained. The gale howled. Beneath his feet was an abyss visible to the very bottom. The griffin, who was just clamoring loudly, was now lying dead flat on the glass like a turtle, his hands and feet desperately clamping the edges, tears and snot spraying wildly. Terrified beyond daring to open his eyes, he let out a shrill, pig's laughtering scream. I just wanted to leave him hanging here, let him properly admire the beautiful scenery on the ground. To prevent him from getting too bored at night, I returned to the top of the pillar and poured down a bucket of water. The water flow cascaded down from 100 meters high, forming a spectacular waterfall hanging upside down in the sky. In this era of the Great Famine, this infinite waterfall is the most conspicuous landmark. As long as any refugees who cannot survive see it, they will surely gather here. Having finished the job, I took a leap. The sound of the wind roared in my ears, and the feeling of weightlessness from free-falling was thrilling to the extreme. Plop! Accurately landed in the water pit prepared precisely below. Completely unharmed. Perfect MLG water drop. I had a comfortable sleep. Early the next morning, I stretched and pushed open the door, just in time to see Arthur standing downstairs carrying a basket with a foolish smile. Boss, my mother baked soft white bread, and there's hot oatmeal. From now on, I'll deliver breakfast to the boss every day. I invited him inside to eat together. This boy was fidgeting, holding it in for a long time before dropping a line. Boss, do you need a maid to serve your daily life? I almost spat out my oatmeal. One guess and I knew it was that domestic official Elwyn who taught him. I waved my hand and refused, casually teasing Arthur if there was any girl he had his eye on. And if there was, I would personally act as a priest to guarantee it for him. This innocent young man instantly blushed bright red. waving his hands continuously saying no. After eating and drinking our fill, I dragged Arthur to the farm to feed the animals. As soon as we stepped out the door, we saw the 3-me turtle iron golem titan squatting on the ground, holding a red flower in his hand, trying to hand it to a wild black cat that had spawned from nowhere. I pulled out a raw cod and walked over. The black cat smelled it, came over, and ate it ravenously. A few red hearts popped up above its head, and a red collar appeared on its neck. Feline beast, successfully tamed. I scooped up the black cat and sniffed it deeply twice, naming it Dream. Titan looked at the red flower he failed to give away, scratched his iron head, turned around, and shoved it into the hands of a passing villager carrying water, scaring the villager into almost dropping the water buckets, bowing continuously in thanks. Walking outside the village's dirt wall, the area was densely packed with the refugees saved last night. The old farmer Oswald was leading the farmers, frantically using bone meal to ripen red mushrooms to build temporary shelters for them. These refugees were too miserable. Every single one had faces ashen as death, starved to skin and bones, looking like living corpses that could still breathe. Even while holding hot porridge and bread in their hands, there was not a hint of light in their eyes, only deep fear and numbness. A little girl timidly walked up to me. Her hair was withered and yellow like weeds, her stomach shriveled, and her lips dry, cracked, and bleeding. Big brother, are you a god? Her voice was hollow and hoarse. My mother said, gods can make it rain and can give people enough to eat. They all say you are a god. Is it true? The surrounding refugees all stopped their movements and stared fixedly at me. They needed a hope to keep living. Meeting everyone's expectant gaze, I nodded without hesitation. Of course I am. Here, no one will go hungry. I slowly crouched down, looking straight into the little girl's eyes, and flipped my palm. Swish! A bright red apple appeared out of thin air in my palm. I handed the apple to her. The girl took the apple trembling. Immediately after, my wrist flipped again. A delicate, dripping wet pink peony flower appeared at my fingertips. I gently tucked the flower into the girl's withered yellow hair. Don't be afraid, you won't go hungry. I will protect you all. As soon as the words fell, there was dead silence. Following that, hundreds of refugees struggled to get up, fell heavily to their knees, and drew crosses frantically towards me, praying. This time, the fanatic flames named hope reignited in their eyes. A miracle descended, faith was forged. After calming the refugees, I called over the transition villagers to collect the drops they had accumulated during this time. Good heavens, a bountiful harvest. The butcher threw out a large pile of cooked steak and cooked mutton. The armorer directly tossed out a full set of chainmail armor. This is rare equipment that cannot be crafted. The weaponsmith threw out a pile of stone axes and iron axes, and even a golden axe. I was happily stuffing the supplies into my infinite inventory when my gaze suddenly locked onto an item thrown out by the toolsmith. My breathing hitched sharply, my eyes instantly widening. Lava bucket. Lava actually spawned. This is the Middle Ages. Originally, I was still worrying about how to go underground to mine lava, but I didn't expect to get it for free. In the physics laws of MC, lava is the synonym for invincibility. When flowing water meets lava flowing from a source block, it will instantly generate cobblestone. What does this mean? It means that as long as I have a bucket of water and a bucket of lava, I can build infinite stone with my bare hands. With this, a circular city wall 3 meters thick, infinitely high, and absolutely indestructible, can begin construction today. This wall will be called Wall Maria. Not only that, with lava, nether portals and obsidian are all settled. The scope is completely opened. Elwin, I yelled loudly, calling the domestic official over. When is the merchant caravan you're taking to Ironhold preparing to depart? Answering, my lord, in half an hour. Good. Before departing, take Knight Commander Wulfric with you. I walked to the mushroom house where Wulfric was detained. This greedy military officer was thrown by me into a suspended water stream to experience high-altitude survival a few days ago, fell down dizzy from hunger, and happened to smash into the water pit, getting his life back. Seeing me, Wulfric was frightened out of his wits. He rolled and crawled over, frantically kissing my boots. Lord Saint, I'm not dead. I completed the test. Yes, you survived. I looked down at him condescendingly. One final task. Follow the merchant caravan back to Ironhold. Continue being your knight commander. Keep an eye on the movements in the city for me. When you encounter commoners who can't survive, guide them to me. I leaned in closer, my voice dropping to freezing point. If you dare to outwardly comply but secretly oppose, in your next life, I will retain your memories and have you reincarnated as a wild boar rolling in the mud every day. The blood on Wulfric's face drained completely, shaking like a sieve, swearing toxic oaths to the heavens of his absolute loyalty. Half an hour later, Scholar Elwin, Mercenary Braun, and Piers led 30 fully armed Oakhaven militiamen, carrying large and small bags of dye supplies, and embarked on the road to Ironhold. As soon as they left my designated territory, murderous intent lurked everywhere on the wasteland. Barely halfway through the journey, Braun's eyes sharpened, his hand resting on his sword hilt. Elwin, we have tails. A squad of rebels has their eyes on us. Maintain original speed, prepare for battle. Elwin's face did not change color. Before the words finished echoing, nearly 200 people wielding swords and blades charged out from the grass behind, completely surrounding the merchant caravan. The rebel leader at the front, Ragnar, raised his long sword and shouted, "We are people of the Bloodhound Brotherhood. We only seek wealth, not lives. Hand over the goods, and we'll let you live." Facing an enemy 7 times their number, Elwin unhurriedly took out a bag of gold coins, preparing to try peaceful means before resorting to force. Just then, a sharpied lackey among the rebels stared at Piers and violently slapped his thigh. "Boss, I've seen that big guy before. They are people from Oakhaven." Oakhaven? Once these 3 words came out, the previously ferocious and wicked rebels instantly inhaled a breath of cold air, stepped back 3 paces in unison, and lowered all their weapons. "Oh my god, it really is Oakhaven. Rob what Rob? My old mother was taken in by them in the village. I heard that is a holy land directly protected by a god, with endless grain, and a 3-me turtle iron titan guardian, invulnerable to swords and spears." Upon hearing this, cold sweat broke out on Ragnar. In these chaotic times of war, Oakhaven had saved countless of their families, not to mention the terrifying legend of the Saint Silas. The flood washed away the Dragon King's temple. Ragnar quickly sheathed his sword, placing his hand over his chest with a face full of smiles. "We were blind dogs to offend our benefactors. Quick, make way." Elwin went along with it, handing over the gold coins as a tip for their trouble, and politely invited them to visit the village when they had time. Ragnar was moved to tears. In this day and age, there were actually people who didn't look at them as bandits. After the merchant caravan went far away, Ragnar waved his hand. "Send a squad of brothers to follow secretly. Whoever dares to hijack Oakhaven's path is going against our brotherhood. Escort our benefactors into the city." The merchant caravan arrived at Ironhold safely. The city was already completely dilapidated. Disaster victims starved and died on the streets, while the baron and the nobles were still eating meat and listening to music in the castle. The herbalist's son Galen sprinted all the way, rushing into his ancestral old tree apothecary. Old physician Gideon was sighing, dispensing medicine for free to patients without money. A few days ago, the clinic was robbed by mutinous soldiers, and a deep bloody gash was sliced across the back of the old man's hand. Without a second word, Galen pulled out a divine fish rewarded by me and stuffed it into his father's mouth. Visibly, the wound on the old man's hand rapidly scabbed over and fell off, completely restored to its original state. Gideon stared fixedly at his hand, old tears flowing horizontally. "Father, close the door. Come with us," Galen pleaded bitterly. "Here, you can't save a few starving people. At Lord Silas' place, the refugees number in the hundreds and thousands. That's where your medical skills are truly needed. Moreover, my son is still in the village waiting for his grandfather." Gideon stroked the century-old medicine cabinet, letting out a long sigh. "Galen, go take down the signboard of the apothecary. We are moving." On the other side, the merchant street, Elwin found the highest bidding fabric shop in the city and sold the high-quality dyes they brought for an astronomical price. With his chest pocket heavy with gold coins, he had just stepped out the door when a group of people blocked him. The burly man leading them was named Yarick, his face full of fierce flesh, his eyes revealing unconcealed greed and murderous intent. "Young master, what you just sold was dye, right?" Yarick placed his hand over his chest with a fake smile. "We are wandering merchants traveling the realm. Your dye is of excellent quality. Do you happen to have any remaining stock on hand? We are willing to buy it all at a high price." Elwin saw at a glance that these people were not wandering merchants at all, but smuggling bandits who had their eyes on their goods money. The surrounding Oakhaven militiamen reacted extremely quickly, gripping their sword hilts, their murderous intent locking onto Yarick instantly. "Put down your weapons, do not be impolite." Elwin immediately switched to the face of a naive, arrogant young noble, turning his nose up to the sky and snorting. "This young master's surname is George. You want to buy my dye? Fine. But as for the price, I must add a bit more." Yarick saw Elwin's dumb and rich attitude, and his heart blossomed with joy. He immediately took the bait. "Young Master George, name a price. How about adding 50%? 50%? Elwin looked completely disdainful. "Too little. 60%? 70%? 80%? Young master, we really can't add any more." Yarick put on a pained expression, but he was laughing madly inside. Since he was preparing to murder and steal the goods anyway, let alone adding 80%, he would dare to agree even if it was 80 times more. "Good deal." Elwin laughed out loud. "We still have business in the city. We will look for you later to bring the money and hand over the goods." Yarick was terrified this fat sheep would run away, so he hastily assigned a scrawny underling. "Young master, he'll have my subordinate Willie follow you to carry your bags. When you are done with your business, just have him come back and report." "Acceptable." Elwin turned and left. Yarick stared at the backs of the merchant caravan, a cruel sneer curling at the corner of his mouth. "Notify the brothers to grab their weapons. I'm eating this batch of dye for sure." And with his back turned to him, the corner of Elwin's mouth also curled into an icy, mocking arc. The prey has finally taken the bait. Elwin lightly fanned his folding fan, continuing to pretend to be a dumb, rich, cowardly young master, leading the merchant caravan swaggering towards the direction of the village. On the official road, the atmosphere was bizarre. Elwin and his group pulled horse-drawn carts full of supplies, walking in front. Several dozen meters away, the bandit leader Yarick, pretending to be a wandering merchant, brought a group of fierce black market smugglers closely trailing behind like starving wolves smelling blood. Yarick rode on his horse, staring at the young Master George in front, who was hugging the horse's neck tightly and trembling even while riding, feeling contempt to the extreme in his heart. "Boss, look at those guards in front. They actually hold wooden swords in their hands. And wearing broken leather boots, do they really think that can block swords and blades? Purely a bunch of idiots." The scar-faced underling next to him was full of mockery. Yarick sneered. "Who cares what they hold? When we get to a place with no people, we chop them all up along with the goods." He was triumphantly calculating how to murder and rob, when his gaze inadvertently swept toward the distant sky. His smile froze instantly on his face. "What the hell is that?" Yarick rubbed his eyes vigorously, a look of seeing a ghost on his face. He saw that on the horizon dozens of miles away, a narrow wooden staircase, completely without any support, was firmly nailed in midair at an absolutely physics-defying angle, step by step, piercing straight into the clouds, as if to poke a hole in this damn sky. B-boss, you see it too. The scouting underling next to him, Willie, was terrified, his teeth chattering frantically. That's not an illusion. The stairway to heaven the refugees talked about is real. There really is a god backing them. A true god descended. Yarick only felt a chill rush straight from his tailbone to his skull, all the hairs on his body standing on end, his scalp bursting. Rebellions and robberies in these times he dared to do, but to rob a holy land protected by a true god? Lend him 10 guts and he wouldn't dare. He hastily spurred his horse and rushed to Elwin's side, sweating profusely and smiling apologetically. Young Master George, I suddenly remembered I have a little something to do with my business. How about we part ways here? Elwin turned his head, and on that originally cowardly face, there now hung a mocking sneer. Yarick, we've already walked this far. Do you think I will still let you go? Prey and hunter switched identities instantly. Looking at the unfathomable look in Elwin's eyes, Yarick's legs gave out, and he almost fell off his horse. Run? He couldn't run at all. The dozens of militiamen holding wooden swords around him were simply like soul-reaping grim reapers in his eyes at this moment. At this very moment, 100 meters up in the sky, I was lying prone on a suspended block of cobblestone, looking down. This height is just about right. I looked at the ant-sized figures below, steadily holding a bucket of boiling lava in my hand. My plan is simple: build a city wall. Dirt walls simply cannot stop an army besieging a city. I want to use MC's most hooligan-like physics laws to give this dark age an upgrade in intensity. After confirming no villagers were running around directly below, I flipped my wrist. Splash! A bucket of blazing lava cascaded madly down the edge from the high sky. On the ground, Yarick and the others, who were originally walking forward with apprehensive hearts, suddenly felt a heat above their heads. Look at the sky. Something red is falling. Willie screamed shrilly. Everyone jerked their heads up. They saw the sky seemingly torn open, rolling lava, like a reversed red waterfall, carrying a temperature that incinerates everything, and a pungent smell of sulfur roared down from the clouds, smashing toward the earth. This was a scene mortals simply could not comprehend. This is world-ending heavenly fire. It's over. It's all over. Yarick fell to his knees with a thud, his intestines green with regret. Holding his agonizing stomach, looking at the sea of fire about to swallow them, he despairingly closed his eyes. I just wanted to steal some dye. Is there a need to rain down heavenly fire to smite me? Just at the moment the lava completely touched the ground and formed a red wall of fire. High in the sky, I swiftly retrieved the lava bucket, and immediately after, at the source of the lava, poured down a bucket of water. Sizzle, sizzle, sizzle. A deafening steam explosion sound resonated through the clouds. The water flow spread madly along the path of the lava. Under the absolute law of water and lava making contact, the boiling lava instantly cooled and solidified. In the blink of an eye, a miracle was born. A gigantic, incredibly thick wall of pure cobblestone, so high you couldn't see the top, forcefully shot up from the ground, spanning across heaven and earth. I leaped, performing a leap of faith straight into the water pit below, stood up completely unharmed, and casually installed an iron door into the giant wall. Taking several hours, the medieval version of Wall Maria was completed. I munched on an apple, looking at my masterpiece with satisfaction. Meanwhile, Yarick and the gang of bandits outside the wall were so terrified they had already wet their pants, neatly kneeling on the ground, knocking their heads hard into the mud, frantically praying and begging for mercy. Outside the dirt wall gate, Elwin returned fully loaded with the merchant caravan. Elwin, what good things did you bring back from this trip? I asked with a smile, leaning against the wall. Elwin came forward with a fanatical look on his face, suppressing his excitement to report. Lord Silas, I bought all sorts of exquisite pastries. They are all on your table. I also specially invited a few bards with lutes and court theatrical play troupes back. If my lord is bored, you can watch these mortal plays to relieve boredom. This guy's mind is truly agile. Under the guise of providing relaxation for the villagers, he specially got me a private theater. Fine, I also wanted to see what a medieval live performance looks like. I nodded in satisfaction, my gaze shifting, landing on Yarick and the others shaking like sieves nearby. And what is going on with them? These guys all had thick waists and broad shoulders, looking more like bandits than bandits, but now they were kneeling on the ground shaking like quails. Lord, spare our lives. God, spare our lives. Yarick's soul was frightened out of the sky. He kowtowed frantically, his lips so nimble he spilled all the details of their attempt to murder and steal the goods, only to be terrified out of their wits by the heavenly fire. Afraid that, if he spoke a second too slow, I would hang him in the sky like a kite. We are smugglers of contraband goods. Lord have mercy, give us a chance to atone for our crimes. Smuggling merchants? That is a high-risk profession. My mind stirred, and my gaze locked onto Yarick. Ding! An illusory MC trading panel actually popped up directly before my eyes. I was stunned on the spot. Good heavens, these black market smugglers traveling all over under the system's judgment were actually equivalent to the wandering trader in MC. Then wouldn't the lackeys carrying goods behind them be two-legged walking trader llamas? Suppressing the wild joy in my heart, I glanced over the trading list. 5 emeralds, 1 pufferfish bucket, 1 emerald dye, 5 emeralds, 1 spruce sapling, 1 emerald, 2 pointed dripstone. Absolute kill. A direct absolute kill. Pointed dripstone. This thing is the core item for creating infinite lava. With it, paired with a cauldron, I can completely say goodbye to the hard labor of digging everywhere for lava. Once I gather 10 buckets of lava, the portal to the nether can be opened directly. And the spruce sapling. As long as I grow a giant spruce tree, a large patch of podzol will be generated underneath. With podzol, even in broad daylight, I can ignore light restrictions and crazily plant giant mushroom houses. This is simply offering fuel in snowy weather. The look I gave Yarrick instantly became incredibly affectionate. How are these fierce bandits? They are clearly my wealth-bringing boys. Want to live? You can. With my hands behind my back, I looked down at him condescendingly. I give you a task. Go find a person for me. Whatever my lord commands. Climbing mountains of swords or crossing seas of fire, this lowly one absolutely will not frown. His name is Albert. He is a scholar proficient in alchemy and mechanical engineering, who has always been suppressed by the Orthodox Church. Who I was looking for was exactly a Da Vinci-style genius of the Middle Ages. For my future redstone technology tree and modern construction, I must have a knowledgeable local to take the lead in research. Making him copy useless theological parchments every day is a pure waste of talent. As long as you bring the person back to me with every hair intact, not only can your death sentences be pardoned, but I can also specially grant you and your families to move in and live inside this high wall. I threw out the ultimate bait directly. In this chaotic world where human lives are as cheap as grass, to be able to live in an Eden protected by a true God, where one will never go hungry, this is earth-shattering immense wealth. When Yarrick and the bandits behind him heard this, their eyes instantly turned red. Their breathing was heavy, and the fanatical light of faith shot out directly from the bottom of their eyes. Thank you for your grace in sparing our lives, my lord. Rest assured, my lord, even if we have to tie him up, we will definitely bring the person back to you bound. The group of bandits roared at the top of their lungs. Catching white wolves with empty hands, not only did I manipulate a batch of fierce bandits, but I also conveniently arranged a talent recruitment plan. I waved my hand in satisfaction, turned, and walked back to the village. Returning to the safe zone, I immediately took out emeralds and found Yarrick to complete the trades. 65 emeralds smashed down. For pufferfish buckets, 7 spruce saplings, 10 pointed dripstones, 10 rooted dirt, all stuffed into my inventory. This wave of trades directly maxed out my experience bar, leveling me up on the spot. The territory range I can control instantly expanded by a full 3 times. Without delay, I immediately pulled out 5 iron ingots and crafted a cauldron in the crafting table. Walking to an empty space, I used cobblestone to build a small platform 3 meters high and poured my only bucket of lava on top, sealing it in. Next, at the bottom of the cobblestone directly under the lava, I hung the pointed dripstone upside down. On the ground directly below, I placed the cauldron. Drip. A drop of blazing lava followed the dripstone, precisely falling into the cauldron. It's done. The infinite lava machine is running perfectly. As long as I wait for it to drip full, I can use an empty iron bucket to endlessly scoop out lava. The passageway to the nether is already waving at me. Night fell. Outside the village, the dozens of city craftsmen Elwyn brought back were following the chief craftsman Roderick towards the mushroom district, trembling with fear. They thought they were captured to do hard labor, and definitely wouldn't have enough to eat or wear warm clothes, and would still have to take the whip. An old bachelor even timidly asked if they could go back to the city to be refugees. Roderick cursed them, hating iron for not becoming steel. Go back my ass. Following the Lord here, you have big houses to live in, and endless roast meat and bread to eat. Did the king ever care if you lived or died? The Lord ensures you are full. The craftsmen were all dumbfounded. Endless bread? Not going hungry. When they held the steaming hot bread and roast meat, their tears could no longer hold back, pattering down. In this world where even the tree bark was gnawed clean, there was actually truly a pure land. They fell to their knees on the ground, frantically making the sign of the cross toward my direction, their mouths constantly muttering words praising the Lord. From this moment on, the village gained another batch of diehard fans. Early the next morning, sunlight filtered through the glass window onto my bed. I stretched comfortably, feeling something furry rubbing against the back of my hand. I opened my eyes and saw the black cat Dream sitting obediently next to my pillow, purring from its throat. And right next to its paw lay a strange item emitting a faint glow. Phantom membrane. My eyes lit up sharply, and I grabbed this treasure in my hand. My God, I was still worrying before. This world doesn't spawn mobs at all. Where am I going to fight phantoms to get this thing? I never expected this cat would directly pop out gold coins for me during the daily morning gift check. With this thing, repairing Elytra is possible. I excitedly picked up the black cat, sniffed it deeply twice, and rolled out of bed. Carrying my iron sword, I went straight to the backyard farm. The cows and sheep had multiplied so much now that the fences were almost bursting. It's time to harvest a wave of resources. I walked to the side of the cow pen and opened a gap. A few cows instantly squeezed out. I quickly sealed the gap with quick eyes and hands, drew my iron sword, and chopped down. Resolved 1 in 2 strikes. A frantic flurry of damage out output, and the ground was full of floating leather and raw beef. I sucked all the drops into my inventory, placed a new crafting table at the farm entrance, slapped down several large wooden chests, hung up an oak sign saying agricultural products, and stuffed all the meat inside sorted by category. Having finished the daily harvest, I walked over to the infinite lava machine. The cauldron was already full of boiling lava. I scooped it with an iron bucket, and the second bucket of lava was in my hands. The next main event is making salt. The smuggled salt left by Yarrick was of extremely poor quality, yellow, bitter, and mixed with mud and sand. As an MC player possessing modern chemistry knowledge, how could I possibly eat this kind of garbage? I couldn't do this matter personally. I had to find a bright-minded diehard fan to take charge. I called over villager Colin. I want to teach you an alchemy technique to refine pure salt. I stared into his eyes, my tone serious. Thinking it over, in the entire village, the person I trust the most is you. I leave this technology for you to manage. As soon as this sentence fell, Colin's brain instantly exploded with a buzz. His eyes abruptly erupted with a wolf-like light, his eye sockets instantly turning completely red, his lips trembling frantically. The Lord said, "Trust me the most." He trembled with excitement, his hands tightly twisting together. I will absolutely not fail the Lord's trust, even if I die 10,000 deaths. I nodded in satisfaction and began the on-site teaching. I built a filtration device, laying cotton cloth at the bottom, charcoal in the middle, and sand and gravel on top. Dissolving the coarse salt, I poured it in for filtering, and finally boiled it over the MC campfire to evaporate. As the moisture rapidly evaporated, a thick layer of salt frost, as white as snow, began to form at the bottom of the pot. I broke off a piece and tossed it into my mouth. The bitter taste completely vanished, leaving only pure, savory saltiness. Colin watched from the side, his eyes going straight, as if witnessing some world-creating miracle. Memorized it all? From now on, the salt refinery is under your control. I handed the floor over to him. Colin received the decree and ran off happily. I let out a long breath. Turning my head, my gaze suddenly fell upon the row of large wooden chests at the farm entrance. Wait, a bolt of lightning suddenly flashed through my mind. MC's chests. The items placed inside have their time absolutely stopped. The roast meat Arthur gave me before had been in there for days, and when taken out, it was still fresh and steaming hot. If villagers can also open the chests to deposit and withdraw items, then for the village's hundreds of thousands of pounds of grain, do we still need to dig basements to pile it up? We wouldn't even need to build cellar cold storages. Outside the salt refinery, I looked at Colin's excited retreating back, my gaze abruptly snapping toward the rows of large MC chests made of logs at the farm entrance. If the villagers can also use this absolute time-stopped ultimate storage artifact, the entire logistic system of Oakhaven will welcome an ultimate evolution akin to a dimensional strike. It's time to test whether the villagers can open my Pandora's box. I strode with large steps toward the chests,